Then I went to Douluo. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 301 Victory. At the moment of being hit by this soul skill, the target will also have a fixed effect for a period of time, which is very similar to the 3000 plum rains. In short, the moment the devouring dragon was controlled, Lu Qiufeng, who had already circled around its side, launched an attack on it. The 7 soul rings surrounding the Qiufeng sword body flashed almost at the same time. Qiufeng made a crisp humming sound and then flew high into the sky. At the moment when Qiufeng was released, Lu Qiufeng himself turned into a ray of light, followed Qiufeng into the air, and finally merged into Qiufeng. The next moment, Qiufeng's size grew rapidly until it became a giant sword that was tens of meters long. The huge sword body was surrounded by strange and gorgeous light, and then it dragged a gorgeous tail flame and went towards the devouring dragon below, whose body was stiff, and the tip of the sword reached the devouring dragon's eyes. The devouring dragon, whose body was completely stiff, naturally could not defend Lu Qiufeng's full strength attack well, and could only passively bear it. So Qiufeng's sword pierced straight into the devouring dragon's eyes. But at this moment, all the restrictions on the devouring dragon were invalid. A ball of dark energy suddenly appeared in its mouth. Then the dark energy quickly spread to the surroundings until it completely covered the area of 20 meters. Coincidentally, Lu Qiufeng's martial soul was also in the range of this dark energy. The next moment, the dark energy twisted. The space in it and the huge Qiufeng twisted together. All of the energy followed the dark energy and swarmed into the devouring dragon's wide-open mouth. So, the half of the devouring dragon's head that was almost cut open by Qiufeng began to heal rapidly. Qiufeng's sword body was squeezed out by the flesh and scales that gradually grew back, and finally completely separated from the devouring dragon. In the process of being gradually squeezed out, the huge energy attached to Qiufeng was also constantly being swallowed by the devouring dragon, so the luster emitted by Qiufeng was also gradually decreasing. Mujing and Yilingling were also within the range of the devouring dragon's innate soul skill, devouring heaven and earth. However, the two immediately opened their defensive soul guides, and Mujing immediately controlled a large amount of elemental energy to protect the two, which temporarily saved them from danger. Under Mujing's protection, Yilingling also immediately began to treat them, which could also slow down the speed of being devoured. Yilingling not only put on the Soul Power Amplification Soul Guide, but also displayed his martial soul true body. A huge white and tender crabapple flower appeared behind Mujing. As the crabapple petals fell one by one, the conditions of several people became better than before. The most intuitive thing was that Qiufeng's sword body had a shining luster again. However, this situation was only temporary after all, because their soul power would always be consumed, but the devouring dragon's own soul power would continue to increase. So, after getting the support of Yilingling, the huge Qiufeng suddenly turned into a dazzling sword light that was difficult to distinguish with the naked eye, and flew towards the wide-open mouth of the devouring dragon along with the dark energy. After fighting together for so long, the three of them also developed an excellent tacit understanding. So Mujing also reacted to what Lu Qiufeng wanted to do at the first time. So she immediately threw the 7-star plum branch in her hand. After flying out of the range of the soul guide shield, the slender 7-star plum branch was immediately pulled by the dark energy and flew towards the mouth of the devouring dragon. And along with the 7-star plum branch, there was also the extremely rich elemental energy condensed on its branch. When it was about to approach the devouring dragon, Mujing stretched out her hand to the flying 7-star plum branch, so the 7-star plum branch stopped in the air, struggling in the suction, trying to return to its owner's hand. However, although the branches of the 7-star plum stopped, the rich elemental energy could not stop. It was still pulled by the dark energy and flew into the mouth of the devouring dragon. Under Mujing's deliberate control, the rich elemental mist entered the mouth of the devouring dragon one step ahead of the sword light transformed by Qiufeng. Following in, it was Qiufeng's dazzling sword light. At the same time, Mujing raised her other hand. The next moment, the ground where the devouring dragon stood began to tremble violently, and this oil flew around. In the end, the devouring dragon could not stabilize its body and fell down in the trembling and flying soil. So the soul skill it was performing was interrupted. The flying soil was like a restraint belt, tying it up while also causing its body to sink continuously. At the moment when the soul skill of devouring heaven and earth was interrupted, the elemental clouds rushing towards its mouth also turned into ice cones, flames and other highly offensive objects in an instant, all hitting the devouring dragon. The sword light also entered the mouth of the devouring dragon. It also entered its body. The devouring dragon's body suddenly froze. Then, fine cracks appeared on its body, and from those cracks, a light like the color of maple leaves was released. Then, the light became stronger and completely cut the devouring dragon into pieces. The most dazzling light shot out from the blooming thousands of lights, and finally landed beside Mu Jing and Yi Lingling, and turned into Lu Qifeng again. His face was pale, and after appearing, he sat on the ground with his buttocks, and gasped for breath. Mu Jing and Yi Lingling's situation at this time was not much better. Although the battle just now ended quite quickly, the three of them went all out, and the devouring dragon's innate soul skill, devouring heaven and earth, also devoured a lot of their soul power, so now they appear a little weak. However, they finally defeated this soul beast with a cultivation of 90,000 years. Looking at the black soul ring floating quietly above the body of the devouring dragon, which had been shattered into pieces, the three of them were somewhat emotional. Yi Lingling said with some regret, "What a pity. If you had met it earlier, wouldn't it be better for you, Xia Feng, to absorb this 90,000-year soul ring as your seventh soul ring? Speaking of which, the attributes of this devouring dragon are quite compatible with you. After all, your Chiu Feng can also devour vitality." After saying that, she also sat on the ground without caring about her image. Lu Qifeng smiled bitterly and said, "If I were still a soul emperor, it might not be so easy to deal with this devouring dragon." "I can only say that everything is destined," Mu Jing said. "Take a break for a while and recover your soul power, and then we will immediately withdraw from the core circle. Now both of you are trapped in the side effects of the martial soul true body. Even if a 50,000-year soul beast comes, it will be difficult for us to resist." The two had no objection, nodded, and took out a milk bottle to recover their soul power. Mu Jing also sat down and took out her own milk bottle to recover the soul power consumed in the previous battle. But her eyes drifted to the depths of the forest. The trees in the demon forest are darker than those in other places, so they look very depressing. And in the depths of the dark forest, there seems to be something more depressing. In a trance, it seems that they are already in another world. I may have a tendency to be masochistic. When I am on a short notice, I write more fluently. Then I will continue to update 6 times a week tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. Doj, well, actually the author has to be busy with the registration these 2 days. Chapter 302 True and False. Mu Jing suddenly had a bad premonition. Especially when the feeling of panic took over everything at the first moment. She immediately looked at Lu Qifeng next to her. Just as she was about to speak, she thought of something. Why not delay a little longer and recover her soul power? In this way, we will have a greater chance of winning when facing danger. However, the moment this thought came to her mind, she immediately broke out in a cold sweat. What Tang Liu had told them before was now very clear in her ears. The illusion is completely controlled by the creator of the illusion, including all the thoughts, ideas, and even memories in the minds of the people in the illusion. If it is really as she guessed, then the three of them may not be recovering their soul power at all. Therefore, there is no need to delay time. She looked at Lu Qifeng and opened her mouth to speak. But she stopped abruptly when she was about to make a sound. What if the thoughts she had just now were actually given to her by the illusion controller who didn't know whether he existed or not? So she stopped the urge to speak again. But what if this thought is also true? But at least, it's always right to let Lu Qifeng confirm it. She was about to speak, but she realized something. Is this Lu Qifeng really Lu Qifeng? If she asked directly, wouldn't it be alarming? If this is really an illusion, then the controller of this illusion should have known that she saw it long ago. So everything she sees now, everything that pops up in her mind, it may be false. It was deliberately given by someone. She has no way to determine the truth of all this. There is no way to determine the truth of the thoughts and memories in her mind. For the first time, she felt panic and helplessness. Everything was like a heavy stone, pressing on her heart, making her breathless. The feeling that everything became uncertain, the feeling of doubting everything, almost tortured her crazy. She didn't even know whether all the feelings she felt now were real. She knew nothing. She couldn't do anything. She could only watch, or maybe she wasn't watching at all. In short, she could only let all this happen helplessly. Maybe, she is actually crazy now. She just doesn't know it. When all her thoughts are no longer her own, she tries to let herself go completely and tries not to think about anything. But she also doubts whether her current behavior is influenced by the manipulator. Like a frightened deer, everything around her is a threat to her life in her eyes. Soon, Yi Lingling and Lu Qiufeng also noticed her abnormality, so they stood up and looked at her in confusion. Before the two of them could speak, they saw Mu Jing stood up immediately because of the action of the two of them standing up, and stepped back, keeping a distance from them. She looked at them vigilantly, her eyes full of confusion and bewilderment, and the pain of doubting everything. Seeing her like this, Yi Lingling and Lu Qiufeng didn't dare to approach her casually, so they stood where they were and stretched out their hands to signal her to calm down. Yi Lingling spoke first. Mu Jing, what happened? Mu Jing looked at them. Can I trust you? Yi Lingling and Lu Qiufeng were both confused. Mu Jing looked at Lu Qiufeng. Use your sword eyes and tell me what you see. After hearing what she said, Lu Qiufeng also realized that they might be trapped in an illusion. After all, after fighting with a 90,000-year-old devouring dragon, the three of them were in a very weak state, and it was easy for the evil eye's mental power to take advantage of them. His expression became more serious, and he immediately used his sword eyes. But nothing happened. He did not relax his vigilance because of this. After looking around for a week, he stopped using the sword eyes. Lu Qiufeng looked at Mu Jing in confusion and said, "We are not in an illusion, are we?" Mu Jing now found it difficult to trust the two teammates in front of her. She said, "I am not like you. I can't be sure whether I am in an illusion or not, so I can't be sure whether what you said is what the owner of this illusion wants you to say." Lu Qiufeng's expression changed. "Do you think I am deceiving you?" Yi Lingling couldn't help but say, "Mu Jing, you know the effect of Xia Feng's sword eyes. If we are really in an illusion, then this illusion will be seen through by him directly." Lu Qiufeng said in a deep voice, "You are just too anxious, so you think you are in an illusion now." The more the two said this, the more suspicious Mu Jing became. She began to slowly move away from Yi Lingling and Lu Qiufeng. "My intuition tells me that there must be something wrong here." There was another sentence stuck in her throat and she didn't say it. "You also have a problem." Yi Lingling and Lu Qiufeng also took steps at the same time and walked towards Yi Lingling. Yi Lingling said, "Mu Jing, calm down. You don't have enough soul power in your body right now. If you encounter any danger, you will be in trouble. Moreover, Xia Feng and I are now suffering from the side effects of our martial soul avatars. Among the three of us, only you have full combat power after your soul power is fully restored. If you leave like this, it will be difficult for Xia Feng and I to deal with soul beasts." Mu Jing stopped because of her words. Yi Lingling and Lu Qiufeng also stopped at the same time. Mu Jing looked at Yi Lingling and said, "You are right." Yi Lingling breathed a sigh of relief imperceptibly. But Mu Jing spoke again at this time. "However, Lingling, do you still remember what Tang Liu said to you in the carriage when we came to the Sun Moon continent?" Yi Lingling was stunned. What? Did he say anything to me?" Mu Jing took a step forward and asked tentatively, "You really don't remember?" Yi Lingling felt a little strange. "Should I remember something? Did he really say something to me?" Mu Jing took another step forward, with a smile on her face. "You really don't remember?" Yi Lingling said blankly. "Tell me, what should I remember?" A 7-star plum branch appeared in Mu Jing's hand, and 6 soul rings, 2 yellow, 2 purple and 2 black, rose slowly from the bottom of her feet. She looked at Yi Lingling, then glanced at Lu Qiufeng, but finally her sight returned to Yi Lingling. Mu Jing smiled and said, "But, the Yi Lingling I know remembers what Tang Liu said to her that day." She paused, then continued, "So, you are fake. The author has to go to school on the 19th. So from tomorrow until the 19th, there will be 6 updates. Sorry, I'm making a doghead funny double life-saving sound, but the Weibo these 2 days is really too fragrant." Chapter 303 See-Through. "You are fake. He is fake. Everything around here is fake," Mu Jing said with a smile, and then raised the 7-star plum in her hand. The next moment, as she waved, the front end of the 7-star plum branch suddenly emitted an ice blue light, heading straight towards Yi Lingling. Yi Lingling was immediately shocked, and jumped back to avoid the ice blue light. The light fell on the place where she was standing before, exploding a large piece of ice flowers. Lu Qiufeng also released his martial soul. Qiufeng at this time, pointed his sword at Mu Jing from a distance, and said angrily, Mu Jing, are you crazy? Mu Jing just smiled, looked at them without saying anything, but there was a dangerous light flashing in her eyes. Then, she raised the 7-star plum branch in her hand again, and gently waved it, and water splashes, ice cones, flames, stones, wind blades, light arrows, and shadows flew towards Yulingling and Lu Qiufeng like a rain curtain. Under the side effects of the spirit avatar, although Yulingling and Lu Qiufeng had the cultivation of soul saints, they could only exert the strength of soul kings. So when facing Mu Jing's attack, they both chose to retreat. Yulingling and Lu Qiufeng kept retreating, and Mu Jing followed closely, throwing countless elemental attacks at them as if they were free. However, although Mu Jing's attacks were very dense, none of them really hit Yulingling or Lu Qiufeng. She was just forcing Yulingling and Lu Qiufeng, leaving them no chance to breathe. Mu Jing seemed to be waiting for something. And she finally waited for it. Yulingling screamed, I remember what Tang Liu said to me." Mu Jing stopped chasing the two, and the elemental attacks flying towards Yulingling and Lu Qiufeng also stopped in the air. Mu Jing then looked at Yulingling and asked her, "What did Tang Liu tell you?" Yulingling was speechless. So Mu Jing raised her hand again, and waved the 7-star plum tree. Yulingling exclaimed "Ah," and then said, "He told me that he likes me." Mu Jing immediately looked at Lu Qiufeng beside Yulingling. But Lu Qiufeng didn't react at all. So she laughed. Yulingling asked curiously, "What are you laughing at?" Mu Jing smiled and shook her head gently, saying, "Soul beasts are just soul beasts after all." She curled the corners of her lips lightly. Not a very smart girl. Yulingling's expression changed. "What are you talking about?" Mu Jing chuckled and said, "Do you know that you were right at the beginning?" She doesn't remember what Tang Liu said to her that day, because Tang Liu erased her memory. She then raised her hand to stop Yulingling, who was about to say something. "Hey, don't tell me nonsense like you forced me to say it or I just made it up in a hurry. After you said 'I remember,' I kept imagining in my mind the sentence Tang Liu said he liked Yulingling that day." Mu Jing looked at Yulingling's bad expression, laughed lightly, and then continued, "Then the facts that follow told me that you read my thoughts." "But, how could Yulingling have the ability to read other people's thoughts?" Yulingling said calmly. "How can you be so sure? What if everything is a coincidence?" Mu Jing just smiled and answered her, "Yeah, it's not impossible to have a coincidence. So, what really makes me sure is the reaction of Lu Qiufeng that you forged." Yulingling's expression changed drastically. "This kid likes your female companion," Mu Jing said. "Oh. Don't you want to keep pretending?" Yulingling said to herself. "That's impossible. In your mind, you clearly believe that Lu Qiufeng doesn't like Yulingling," Mu Jing said, "because I'm not sure myself. Since it's an uncertain thing, why should I be sure of it?" Then she smiled maliciously. "Besides, liking is different from loving, Yulingling, but I still haven't read any memory of Lu Qiufeng loves Yulingling or Yulingling loves Lu Qiufeng in your memories." "I said it, why should I be sure of something that is uncertain? But you will always have doubts." "But I didn't read any memories related to this, because all the memories you read are what I want you to read." Yulingling's expression froze. "This is impossible. Our mental powers are not at the same level at all." "It used to be." Mu Jing looked into her eyes and said. Yulingling's expression changed. When Mu Jing did not answer her, but said, "I don't need to be stronger than you, as long as you can't get into my mind." As soon as the voice fell, her eyes lit up, and all the elemental energies that were still in the air became agitated at the same time and gradually gathered together. Yulingling said coldly, "It's useless. As long as your mental power is not as strong as mine, you can't break my illusion." Mu Jing answered her loudly. "I said, I don't need to be stronger than you." Around her, all kinds of elemental energies suddenly became several times denser, so her whole person looked like she was blooming an extremely gorgeous 6-color light outward. The next moment, all the elemental energy burst outward, like a huge wave with 6 colors, seemingly drowning everything. Wherever the elemental wave passed, the space became distorted. When the elemental wave swept over Yulingling and Lu Qiufeng, both of them shattered into countless fragments. And along with it, the haze in front of Mu Jing's eyes also shattered. The surrounding scene was exactly the same as in the illusion, just like moving the eyes from a realistic painting to the real scenery. A huge bright silver eyeball with a diameter of more than 3 meters quickly retreated, avoiding the surging elemental wave. Mu Jing's eyes immediately locked onto the bright silver eyeball, and the corners of her lips curled slightly. "I just need you to take the initiative to solve the illusion." The huge eyeball with a diameter of more than 3 meters dragged 12 tentacles under it. Among them, 6 were relatively dark silver, and the other 6 were bright silver like its own eyeball. At the first sight of it, Mu Jing suspected that it was a pure spiritual evil eye tyrant that Tang Liu mentioned. But after carefully observing its tentacles, Mu Jing discovered that the main attribute of this evil eye was still not spiritual. Ever since I found that I couldn't seem to get perfect attendance, my enthusiasm has weakened a lot. Spreading hands and question mark. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 304 Silver-Eyed Tyrant. That bright silver color. More like space. Mu Jing's heart skipped a beat. Judging from the size of this evil eye, its cultivation must have reached 100,000 years. And her 7th soul ring just needed a soul beast with space attributes. Everything seemed to be tailor-made for her. But she glanced at Lingling and Lu Qiufeng who were in a coma. Could she defeat the top fighting force in the soul beast world, a soul beast of 100,000 years, with her own strength? Mu Jing glanced at her right hand. The elemental wave she had triggered before also completely subsided at this time, so the 100,000-year level space attribute evil eye also stopped. It stared at Mu Jing from afar with its huge, balloon-like eye, and then spoke. It is indeed a good idea to let me take the initiative to dispel the illusion. But even if you get out of my illusion, what's the use? Its huge silver eye gradually lit up. Or do you, a little soul emperor, have the confidence to defeat me? Mu Jing sensed the danger, and waved the 7-star plum in her hand. A strong wind came and swept her figure into the sky, and also swept Lingling and Lu Qiufeng, who were unconscious on the ground, to a relatively safer place. However, Mu Jing had no time to control it accurately, so Lingling fell directly on Lu Qiufeng. At the moment when Mu Jing flew up, a huge bright silver light column passed by the place where Mu Jing had stood before. Wherever the silver light column passed, the soil, rocks, and grass were all crushed, and then disappeared from the original place out of thin air. This is also one of the innate soul skills of this space-attributed evil eye, the silver eye gaze. Depending on the attributes of the evil eyes, the effects of their gazes are also different. Once the evil eye has been cultivated for 10,000 years, it can be called a tyrant. Just like the evil eye of pure spiritual power is called the evil eye tyrant, this 100,000-year-old evil eye of special attribute can also be called the silver-eyed tyrant. In short, the silver-eye gaze of the silver-eyed tyrant has not only special attributes, but also spiritual attributes. If Mu Jing was hit, even if she was lucky enough not to be torn apart and teleported by the special force, she would be subjected to a strong mental attack, and it is not impossible that her soul would be directly shattered and her body would wither. However, since she dodged it, Mu Jing would not sit and wait for death. At the moment when she was swept into the air by the strong wind, she waved the 7-star plum branch in her hand again. First of all, the 2 major control soul skills, 3,000 plum rains falling in plum blossoms like flowing fire, were released towards the silver-eyed tyrant below at the first time. For a soul skill like blossoming plums like flowing fire that requires aiming and locking, the silver-eyed tyrant with 100,000 years of cultivation may still be able to dodge it, but it is different for 3,000 plum rains falling. Even if Mu Jing's first soul skill cannot control the silver-eyed tyrant for a long time, it at least buys her about half a second. During this half second, the plum blossom fire line of blossoming plums like flowing fire successfully fell on the silver-eyed tyrant, producing the dual effects of binding and burning it. The soul skill of blossoming plums like flowing fire can interrupt the soul skills that the bound target is using. Although the silver-eyed tyrant did not use any soul skills at this time, within the binding time of blossoming plums like flowing fire, it means that it cannot use any soul skills, nor can it use most of its own abilities, and can only bear Mu Jing's control. This time is about 1 second. After all, the soul power in the body of a 100,000-year soul beast is extremely strong, and it is easy to break free from the bondage of blossoming plums like flowing fire. But within this second, Mu Jing's 6th soul skill, the residual shadow of plum blossoms, also fell on the body of the silver-eyed tyrant, taking the opportunity to consume some of its soul power. However, due to the silver-eyed tyrant's own defense, the corrosive effect of the residual shadow of plum blossoms basically failed to take effect on it. But the short-term immobilization effect of the residual shadow of plum blossoms on the silver-eyed tyrant still successfully bought some time for Mu Jing. In this short period of time, Mu Jing controlled the strong wind and quickly moved her body towards the silver-eyed tyrant. At this moment, all the control effects on the silver-eyed tyrant completely disappeared. It looked at Mu Jing in the air and sent out a silver eye gaze again. Mu Jing was well prepared. A huge smooth ice mirror appeared in front of her, reflecting the silver eye gaze into the sky. The silver-eyed tyrant seemed a little surprised, and did not expect that Mu Jing could actually refract its gaze attack in this way. Taking advantage of this little time, Mu Jing, led by the strong wind, got closer to the silver-eyed tyrant again. But her face was not very good at the moment, because the consumption of soul power in her body when she used the ice mirror to reflect the gaze of the silver eye just now was somewhat beyond her expectations. Even though it was not the strongest kind of evil eye, the strength of this silver-eyed tyrant was still beyond her imagination. Under the cutting of the power of space, the ice mirror should have been directly broken, so her soul power was constantly replenished to make up for the consumption of the power of space, which allowed the ice mirror to support it. Moreover, she did not need to completely reflect the gaze of the silver eye, as long as she could escape from the frontal impact range of the silver eye's gaze. Because of the special nature of the seven-star plum, she could also continuously absorb the elemental power around her to replenish her soul power, or directly use the elemental power to replace her soul power. Therefore, although the soul power consumed by reflecting the gaze of the silver eye just now was somewhat beyond her expectations, it was still within an acceptable range. The silver-eyed tyrant naturally saw that Mu Jing was constantly approaching him, so his figure began to retreat. While keeping a distance from Mu Jing, it also continuously released some mental attacks or mental interference to prevent Mu Jing from getting closer. It also found that although its silver eye gaze could pose a great threat to Mu Jing, it might not be able to hide her. But Mu Jing's mental power was not as strong as its own, so its mental attack could cause greater interference to Mu Jing. Although it did not think that Mu Jing, the Soul Emperor, could cause any harm to it, even if she really got close to it, it would only be killed by it, but for the sake of safety, no matter what Mu Jing wanted to do, it would be better not to let her succeed. For other physical attacks, any Soul Master can find a way to dodge, but for invisible mental attacks, it is a bit difficult to dodge. Moreover, when there is an absolute gap in mental power, it is difficult to build up mental defense. In most cases, the party with weaker mental power can only passively withstand the attack. I will not post today. I can't write any more. I will hold back my writing state for a while. Chapter 305 10 Hearts. As expected, under the continuous mental attacks, Mu Jing's pursuit speed suddenly slowed down. Since there was no good defense method, Mu Jing could only concentrate her soul power and mental power, condense them in her head, and reduce the invasion of the silver-eyed tyrant's mental power as much as possible. In this way, the damage she suffered from mental attacks was reduced a lot, but at the same time, because she had to control these, her control over the wind element was weakened. So her speed was constantly slowing down, and finally fell to the ground. Seeing this, the rapidly retreating silver-eyed tyrant immediately stopped his body, and then released the silver eye gaze towards Mu Jing again. However, when the light of the silver eye gaze just bloomed, the silver-eyed tyrant was surprised to find that Mu Jing's figure disappeared in an extremely strange way. It was at this time that the silver eye gaze was released outward. However, in the perception of the silver-eyed tyrant, its silver eye gaze did not hit Mu Jing. Its huge bright silver eyeball turned around and looked for Mu Jing's figure. But nothing was found. However, this did not bother it. Even if Mu Jing was invisible, she would still be invisible under the detection of mental power. However, when the mental power was fully opened, the silver-eyed tyrant shouted in horror, "This is impossible." It thought that Mu Jing had left its mental detection range, so it expanded its mental detection range with some reluctance, but there was still no trace of Mu Jing. So the silver-eyed tyrant was a little panicked. It began to have a premonition that its life today might end here. A few years ago, when they were still in Haoshan City. At that time, they didn't know Lu Qifen, Su Yu and Su Chen. Tang Liu was still selling his small cakes. Yi Lingling was repeating the same life trajectory day after day. At that time, Tang Liu told her, the team he formed was to be able to deal with some of the most important people in the world when necessary. Therefore, in this team, at least 2 pairs of partners who can fuse martial spirits are needed. In addition, Everyone else in the team must have something special. This special thing is not necessarily a gifted talent. Because as long as you are with him, talent is not a problem. What he really needs is people with certain qualities. For example, sufficient vigilance, a good overall view, excellent handling ability, and rich combat experience. These are just the basics. And everyone in this team has a special trait and an indispensable ability. These are the reasons why Tang Liu brought them together. For example, the benevolence represented by unyielding. The benevolence of a doctor. It is exactly related to her healing ability. This is what Tang Liu told her at that time. So she couldn't help but ask, what does she represent? Tang Liu smiled and told her, there are 10 hearts in total: sincere heart, fighting heart, benevolent heart, killing heart, no regret heart, ruthless heart, evil heart, true heart, monarch heart. Why don't you guess which heart you are among them? She said. One is missing. You only said 2 people's 9 hearts. You didn't say the one you represent, right? Hey, we are talking about the heart you represent now. Don't talk about other things. She was silent for a while and said, I don't know, just like Yilingling, when the time comes, you will appreciate it yourself. Yilingling's ability is healing, so she represents the benevolent heart of a doctor. What about herself? She has a top-level plant martial soul, the 7-star plum, which can control and utilize the power of elements. However, among the 9 hearts that Tang Liu told her, it seems that none of them can meet the situation of her 7-star plum. She still doesn't know. But this does not affect her current battle for the time being. The 7-star plum has a strong ability to control the power of elements, but your use of it is still too weak. Look, your control over all elements is still limited to condensing them into entities to launch simple attacks. Relatively speaking, your ability to use the water element is stronger, because you can turn water into ice and snow, but that's all. So, if you can only do this now, why don't you apply this idea to other hitting elements? Ice and snow are just 2 other forms of water. You can compare this to earth. Your use of the earth element is still limited to the point where you can only use stone. Why don't you try to soften the stone and turn it into sand, mud, or even a swamp? When you are in the 4th ring, the 7-star plum can transform one element into another in an instant. Now it just asks you to convert different forms of the same element. I think it shouldn't be that difficult for you. Think about it, if you throw a stone at the enemy is ready to defend, or ready to break the stone you threw, but when the stone is about to come into contact with the enemy's attack, you convert the stone into sand or mud, then what will happen to the enemy who is ready to attack? He will be hit by a lonely blow, and you will take the opportunity to counterattack. No matter what you do with sand and mud, he will most likely not be able to react next, and can only let you manipulate him for a while. If you directly turn the soil into a swamp, then you will have a stronger control ability. If you use it well, it will not be a problem to turn defeat into victory. However, what I want you to learn now is not the earth element, but the light element. This is the 5th elemental ability you have obtained, but how much do you use it? You must have learned to focus light, right? Then what about absorbing light, refracting and reflecting light? These are just the most basic things. What you need to learn is control of all light. As long as you learn to control, everything else will come naturally. But before controlling light, you have to understand the nature of light. It's actually just a kind of wave. So, theoretically speaking, as long as you can control the wave of light, you can control all waves. In addition to light, sound is also a kind of wave. Even what we call mental power is actually a kind of wave. It's a little difficult to explain it to you clearly. After all, you haven't learned these, but in reality you don't need to know, you just need to learn to control it. Once you have learned it, even if someone scans you through mental power, then you just need to control the light element to simulate the other person's mental fluctuations, and feedback it in a way that you are not found. At that time, you will not exist in the eyes of the person who is detecting you. Go to bed, everyone, and then the author will get up at 3 o'clock tomorrow morning. Why? Because the flight is at 7 in the morning. My parents are really good at booking tickets anyway, I will start writing after 3 o'clock, and try to post 1 or 2 chapters before the plane takes off. Recording my old updates, 7 plus tomorrow's required updates, 6. Chapter 306, Silver-Eyed Tyrant, dies. This is why Mu Jing completely disappeared under the detection of the Silver-Eyed Tyrant's spiritual power. In fact, Mu Jing has always been in the range of the Silver-Eyed Tyrant's spiritual power. When the silver-eyed tyrant spiritual power comes to her, she will control the light element to simulate the fluctuation of the same frequency as the silver-eyed tyrant spiritual power, thus creating an illusion that the silver-eyed tyrant spiritual power completely passes through her without encountering any obstacles. Therefore, in the silver-eyed tyrant spiritual world, there is no figure of Mu Jing. And the place where Mu Jing is, in the eyes of the silver-eyed tyrant spiritual power, is just a piece of air. And relying on this method of hiding, Mu Jing's figure gradually approaches the silver-eyed tyrant. However, the spiritual attribute soul beast's foresight of danger is usually dozens of times that of other soul beasts, so she must be extremely careful and must not show any hostility in the process of approaching the silver-eyed tyrant, so as not to alert the enemy. In addition, in order to prevent the tiny details such as footprints from exposing herself, Mu Jing has been controlling the wind element to hold up her body. But in this way, it is necessary to prevent the movement of the wind element from being detected by the silver-eyed tyrant, so it is a big challenge for Mu Jing. Fortunately, she just has such control, so she finally came to the side of the silver-eyed tyrant quietly. But in the perception of the silver-eyed tyrant, it was just a breeze blowing past. Then the next moment, Mu Jing's right hand pressed on the huge eyeball of the silver-eyed tyrant. Now, the silver-eyed tyrant noticed Mu Jing's position, screamed, and the bright silver light condensed again, and the silver eye gaze was about to be launched. At such a close distance, Mu Jing had no chance of evading. Just before the silver light condensed, a faint blue light flowed over the fingertips of Mu Jing's right hand. So the silver light that the silver-eyed tyrant had just condensed dissipated. Its huge body also stiffened in an instant. Mu Jing also controlled the wind element at this time, and quickly retreated with her own body, and then retreated with the unconscious Yilingling and Lu Qifan. But at this moment, the silver-eyed tyrant was frozen in place, and suddenly burst into a strong blue light. The point where the blue light burst out was exactly the point where Mu Jing's right hand had touched the silver-eyed tyrant before. Then, there was an extremely violent explosion. The shock wave of the explosion directly pushed the three people who had not really left at a faster speed. In a hurry, Mu Jing could only condense all the water elements and wind elements around, wrapping them tightly inside, so as to offset the damage of the shock wave and prevent them from hitting tree trunks and rocks, causing serious injuries. The explosion was so powerful that the shock wave directly sent the three people hundreds of meters away, and destroyed countless trees. The light of the explosion also lasted for dozens of seconds. When the dazzling light completely dissipated, a huge pit appeared in the range of the explosion. In the center of the huge pit, a circle of blood-red soul rings floated quietly. Ahem, Mu Jing supported a broken tree trunk beside her and slowly stood up. Although they were several hundred meters apart, Mu Jing still saw the bright blood-red color at a glance, even though it was just a small red dot in her field of vision. Unable to restrain, a smile appeared on her face, which usually had little expression. Success. She succeeded. She successfully killed a 100,000-year soul beast with her own strength. And it took a very short time. But it was also during this short period of time that the silver-eyed tyrant was unable to fully exert his strength, which gave Mu Jing an opportunity to take advantage of it. And the biggest reliance of Mu Jing's victory was the soul skill given to her by the water-attributed soul bone that she had snatched in Mengdu. Water element fission. After activating this soul skill, the water element contained in the part of the target touched by Mu Jing's right hand will be completely controlled by Mu Jing. And as time goes by, the water elements around the part of the target that is touched will also be gradually affected, and will also be completely controlled by Mu Jing, until all the water elements on the target are controlled by Mu Jing. This process is neither fast nor slow. For the silver-eyed tyrant, it takes at least 10 seconds for the water element fission to completely control the water elements on its body. Once the water elements are completely controlled by Mu Jing can detonate them with a thought. The power of the explosion is related to the water elements contained in the target and the strength of the target's soul power. And the skill, if used well, is not impossible to kill an opponent who is several times stronger than oneself in one blow, but it is also possible that it will only blow off a piece of the target's flesh and will not seriously injure the target. However, for soul beasts like the Evil Eye, the eyes are definitely their most vulnerable parts, and any serious damage can kill them. At the beginning, Mu Jing touched the eyes of the silver-eyed tyrant. Naturally, one hit will kill. Moreover, with the silver-eyed tyrant's 100,000-year level cultivation, The explosion after being detonated is almost destructive. The crystal that stored all the evil eye souls could not survive this level of explosion, so the soul ring appeared directly. Otherwise, even if the body was destroyed, the soul of the silver eye tyrant could still escape directly. But now, all this is impossible. Because the silver eye tyrant is completely dead. It was defeated by Mu Jing after all. However, although the 100,000-year soul ring is almost in front of her, and the 100,000-year soul bone that the silver eye tyrant must have produced may have survived the explosion, Mu Jing did not try to absorb it at the first time. She turned around and looked at Yilingling and Lu Qiufeng, who were still unconscious behind her, and then a bright golden light shone on the branches of the seven-star plum. The soft and warm light elements were like feathers, lightly falling on Yilingling and Lu Qiufeng. The rich light elements formed a circle of golden halo around the two people, which looked a little intoxicated. Light attribute, water attribute, and life attribute all have healing abilities. When Mu Jing used the light element to heal Yilingling and Lu Qiufeng, the soft golden color was quietly stained with some mysterious blue-black. A familiar voice that seemed to have not been heard for a long time sounded beside her. "Leave it to me." Mu Jing turned her head and looked at Tang Liu. Tang Liu also looked at her with a smile. "Congratulations, you have successfully passed the test." Chapter 307 Evil Eye Tyrant. "Just leave them to me," Tang Liu said. Mu Jing looked at him with a somewhat uncertain look in her eyes. Tang Liu smiled softly. "Go ahead, that's what you deserve. As long as you believe that you can succeed, you will definitely succeed." Mu Jing then took back the seven-star plum, turned around and walked towards the place where the 100,000-year soul ring was. Her steps were not too fast, but she was firm enough. Tang Liu waved his hand casually, and hail and recovery took effect on Yilingling and Lu Qiufeng. Then, the two of them woke up, and all aspects of their conditions returned to their peak. After the two of them helped each other to stand up, they saw Mu Jing gradually walking towards the red spot. They looked at Tang Liu with some uncertainty. Tang Liu smiled, looked at the two of them, and then nodded slowly. The expressions of the two of them immediately showed surprise and joy. Tang Liu then stopped Yilingling and Lu Qiufeng, who wanted to catch up with Mu Jing, and then said, "There will be plenty of time to congratulate later, but now, you have something more important to do." Yilingling and Lu Qiufeng paused in tacit understanding, and looked at Tang Liu with some doubtful eyes. "Tang Liu, now Lu Qiufeng and Mu Jing have passed the test, but Lingling, you have not successfully passed the test. In addition, you also need to obtain a piece of pure spiritual attribute, the head soul bone of the 100,000-year-old evil eye tyrant. I told you very clearly when you just entered the evil forest. Have you forgotten?" Yilingling and Lu Qiufeng suddenly realized. They had several important tests in the evil forest. The first point is the confrontation of mental power. Lu Qiufeng was the first to complete this test because his sword eyes could see through everything. Then the second one was Yilingling, because she broke through the mental power illusion of the silver eye tyrant with her own strength. Now, only Yilingling has not passed this assessment. To tell you the truth, Lingling, in your current situation, it is impossible for you to break through the powerful mental illusion alone, so the method I give you is to fuse a 100,000-year-old pure spiritual attribute head soul bone to enhance your mental power, so that you have enough ability to defend, break through, and even be immune to mental attacks. Although I told you that there are two assessments, in fact, they are both a tempering of your mental power. Because the so-called second assessment, obtaining a 100,000-year-old pure spiritual attribute evil eye tyrant soul bone, is specially prepared for you. After Tang Liu said this, Yilingling's heartbeat suddenly became much faster. Although she could not absorb a 100,000-year level spirit ring, spirit bones were different from spirit rings. No matter how old the spirit bones were, they could be absorbed by any level of spirit masters. The benefits of a 100,000-year spirit bone were self-evident. And then, Tang Liu's words made Yilingling's heartbeat doubled again. You are lucky this time. You waited for the 100,000-year evil eye that best matched the current spatial attribute of Mu Jing, and you succeeded in killing her. It was also because of this silver-eyed tyrant that an evil-eyed tyrant with pure spiritual attributes was attracted. And the evil-eyed tyrant that was attracted by the death of the silver-eyed tyrant has a cultivation level of more than 100,000 years. In other words, Lingling, you are about to obtain a 200,000-year-old pure spiritual head soul bone. Lu Qiufeng raised a question at this time. A 200,000-year-old soul beast? Doesn't it mean that after a soul beast reaches the 100,000-year level, It can only live for another 1,000 years. Tang Liu looked at him and smiled. You have been deceived, Lu Qifen. Tang Liu continued. In fact, the survival period of soul beasts is far more than 100,000 years. As long as the soul beasts are strong enough and can survive the heavenly tribulations that prevent them from continuing to live again and again, their own strength will continue to grow stronger, and they will become super 100,000-year-old soul beasts with cultivation levels of more than 100,000 years. You can also call these super 100,000-year-old soul beasts fierce beasts. After looking at the two people who looked like they had learned something new today, Tang Liu said, originally, these things were only known to the next generation. However, since you have chosen to follow me, it doesn't hurt to tell you in advance. As soon as he finished speaking, the three people were engulfed by the blue light and then teleported to a place not far from Mu Jing. At this time, Mu Jing had already sat cross-legged and began to absorb the blood-red 100,000-year soul ring. Next to the red soul ring, a small, bright silver skull was quietly floating. The integrity of the skull was also extremely high, almost the same as a whole head. Yilingling and Lu Qifeng looked at Mu Jing, who was absorbing the soul ring, with envy. Tang Liu couldn't help laughing when he saw this. Don't be envious. When we get out of the demon forest, you will all have your first 100,000-year spirit ring at the next destination. Then he turned his head and looked in another direction, talking to himself. After all, the leader of the three treasure basins can't be surpassed by a sea god island, right? His voice was a little low, so Yilingling and Lu Qifeng didn't hear it clearly, but even if they heard it clearly, they didn't understand what it meant. However, the two of them became alert at the same time and took a posture ready to fight at any time. When the martial spirit was released at the first time, the light of the spirit ring began to flicker, because a silver eye suddenly appeared in the distance. Unlike the bright silver color of the silver-eyed tyrant, the silver eye that appeared in the distance looked darker overall and gave people a strange and mysterious feeling. The moment the eye appeared in the field of vision of Yilingling and Lu Qifeng, the two felt an unprecedented sense of oppression. That feeling of oppression was even stronger than the oppression given to them by the silver-eyed tyrant. The two of them also reacted immediately. This should be the real overlord of this evil forest, the 200,000-year soul beast mentioned by Tang Liu. The evil eye tyrant. As the evil eye tyrant got closer and closer to them, the two of them became more and more nervous. The two of them couldn't stop thinking. Is this level of existence really something they can defeat now? Of course not. Especially when Mu Jing is absorbing the 100,000-year soul ring. If Mu Jing has already absorbed the 100,000-year soul ring and soul bone provided by the silver-eye tyrant, then the three of them may still be able to fight the silver-eye tyrant. But now, it's not possible. Tang Liu will not allow any accidents to happen to his team members. So he reached out and gently patted Yilingling and Lu Qifeng on the shoulders. So I said, you are lucky this time? If it was an evil-eyed tyrant that had just entered the 100,000-year-old era, I would definitely not care about you. But now, you just have to watch. He took a step forward and stood in front of Yilingling and Lu Qifeng, then looked up at the evil-eyed tyrant that was slowly approaching, and couldn't help but curl the corners of his lips. It's agreed that later, the soul bone will belong to you, and the soul ring will belong to me. I wish you all a happy Mid-Autumn Festival and National Day. Have you eaten the mooncakes? Have you watched the flag-raising ceremony? Ho ha, let's talk about something serious. Let's start to make up for it tomorrow. Chapter 308 Evil Eye Tyrant Lord. The 200,000-year-old Silver Eye Tyrant lost his life in the first encounter with Tang Liu. After Tang Liu used the Howlin mark to detonate the spiritual power that the Evil Eye Tyrant was proud of, the Evil Eye Tyrant's soul did not even have time to escape, and gloriously gave up his soul ring. At the moment when the blood-red soul ring with two golden lines appeared, Tang Liu reached out and gently stroked the illusory, non-substantial ring with his fingertips. There was a faint flash of illusory blue light at his fingertips. Then he released his first martial soul, the Void Spirit Blue Silver Emperor. So the next moment, the red soul ring with two golden lines appeared behind the 6 soul rings of black, 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 blue, gold, and red. Instantly, it was completely absorbed by Tang Liu. After Tang Liu absorbed this 200,000-year soul ring, he immediately chanted the soul spell and upgraded Yilingling, Lu Qifeng, and Mu Jing, who was absorbing the soul ring. At the same time, he also threw the soul bone from the head of the 200,000-year-old evil eye tyrant towards Yilingling. Tang Liu raised his head slightly and looked towards the center of the evil forest. Then he said, Don't rush to absorb the soul bone. Watch the next battle first." Just as he finished speaking, he turned into a stream of blue light and flew into the sky. Yilingling and Lu Qiufeng looked up from the ground and could only see a point with blue light shining outward. Then, a breath that was enough to make their souls tremble suddenly filled the entire evil forest, which immediately shocked the two. Of course, this trembling feeling was just an illusion of the two. After being upgraded by the virtual spirit exile, they would no longer be affected by any power from the Douluo continent. The reason for this feeling is just because their native souls reacted subconsciously after feeling this breath. In short, not long after the breath appeared, an old voice sounded. "Child, where are you?" This voice seemed to come from the center of the demon forest, but it echoed directly throughout the entire demon forest, forcing all the soul beasts to crawl on the ground, not daring to breathe. Then, a strange mental power wave came from the center of the demon forest, and soon spread to the entire forest. Naturally, it also enveloped Tang Liu, who was already very close to the core of the demon forest. A silver eye with bright red blood appeared in the sky in the center of the demon forest, staring at the blue light in the sky. The next moment, a red light column that seemed to be enough to destroy the world shot out from the huge eye, and directly swallowed up the seemingly insignificant blue light. The blood-colored light column existed for more than tens of seconds before it gradually dissipated. And the blue light had disappeared. No matter how carefully Yilingling and Lu Qiufeng searched, they did not find any trace of the blue dot around the location where the blue light was before. Until the old voice sounded again. "How is this possible?" Yilingling and Lu Qiufeng then turned their gaze to the huge eye. Then, they saw the disappearing blue light in front of the eye. Then, Tang Liu's voice came out from the blue light, just like the old voice, and it also resounded throughout the demon forest. "Nothing is impossible, evil emperor. After all, you are only 700,000 years old. And at most you are going to be promoted to 800,000 years old. But among us, there is actually a soul beast with a cultivation base of 800,000 years. Compared with it, you are not just 100,000 years behind in cultivation." The pupil of the huge eye shrank for a moment, and then the old voice was heard again. "This is impossible." Tang Liu smiled and said, "You will know whether it is true in 9,000 years. By the way, in terms of spiritual power cultivation, you are not the strongest one, human." "What do you mean?" "If you are talking about spiritual soul beasts that are also 700,000 years old, then I am definitely the strongest. Even that sea princess is not as good as me." Tang Liu was not surprised that the evil eye tyrant lord knew the sea princess. He continued, "Since I said that you are not the one with the strongest spiritual power cultivation, then I am definitely not referring to the sea princess. Also among us, there is a soul beast with the highest spiritual power cultivation in the entire Douluo world. Why don't you, evil emperor, guess what the cultivation base of the soul beast I am talking about is?" The evil eye tyrant ruler was completely interested, and he subconsciously asked, "What kind of cultivation?" Tang Liu curled his lips and smirked, "You will know in 9,000 years." The evil eye tyrant ruler was choked. Just as Tang Liu's devilish laughter echoed throughout the evil forest, the evil eye tyrant ruler spoke again, threatening, "You nonsense human, don't think that I will let you go. You just killed one of my children. I swear on the soul of my dead child that I will let you be buried with it." Tang Liu smiled and said, "Then the soul will belong to you, right?" The evil eye tyrant ruler did not speak, but stared at Tang Liu with his huge eye. Tang Liu then smiled and said, "So, don't swear casually. You might as well take a closer look and think carefully. Do you want me to be buried with your dead child?" As soon as he finished speaking, the blue light released from his body became brighter countless times in an instant. At this time, the evil eye tyrant lord also clearly felt a very special breath coming from Tang Liu. A breath that made it instantly possessive. So the evil eye tyrant lord immediately regretted it. But it still said stubbornly, "HMPH, get ready to die." After it sucked all the power from Tang Liu that made it so coveted, Tang Liu would be almost dead. At that time, wouldn't it be buried with its dead child? Moreover, it could steadily survive the 8th heavenly tribulation because of that mysterious power. Isn't it killing two birds with one stone? So the evil eye tyrant lord launched an attack. I saw dark blue light shooting out from its huge pupils and heading straight towards Tang Liu. Like the destructive red light and a light of destruction, this dark blue light is also an extremely powerful soul skill of the evil eye tyrant lord, and it can also be said that the evil eye tyrant lord is the most powerful soul skill, the light of time. Although this is a spiritual attack soul skill, it adds the power of time to the light of time. Later, even decay suffered a lot of losses, consuming a lot of life and cultivation before the effect of the light of time was completely offset. The light of time displayed by Hao alone forced decay to fall into a state of continuous time delay, which gave Hao enough time to use the Guanyin Tears to launch the ghost-carving divine sword, defeating decay in one fell swoop and entering the God realm. And now how powerful will the light of time released by the evil eye tyrant ruler himself be? Tang Liu estimated that, apart from the influence of the protagonist's halo, it would be no problem to directly kill a current, unprepared Tang San in seconds. But it had no effect on him. The next moment the dark blue light of time arrived in front of Tang Liu, it was dissolved by the blue-black light emitted from his body. It was just that the space around Tang Liu shook violently like water waves, and there was no other abnormality. So the evil eye tyrant ruler said again, "This is impossible. Do you know why there is only one update? Because I am still working hard to make up for it. Any of your judgments other than this are not correct. Funny plus angry veins plus sweat." Chapter 309 Reviewing the Pitfalls in Timeline. Nothing is impossible, evil emperor. Just like now, I want to take something from you. Do you think it's possible? Before the evil eye tyrant lord could answer, Tang Liu's figure flashed in front of the evil eye tyrant lord, and his outstretched right hand directly touched the center of the evil eye tyrant lord's pupil. The next moment, an extremely dazzling blue light lit up over the entire evil demon forest, almost covering everything. In the strong blue light, even the blood-red pupils of the evil eye tyrant lord gradually disappeared. And in that instant, the blue light disappeared again, and with it, Tang Liu and the few people watching the battle below disappeared. The evil eye tyrant lord also disappeared. But then, screams and roars resounded throughout the evil demon forest. That was the miserable howl of the evil eye tyrant lord. Tang Liu looked at the blood-red light in his hand. This evil light was sealed in a Howlin mark. As Tang Liu's mind moved slightly, the blood-red light in the Howlin mark slowly changed into the shape of an eye. The whole body was blood-red, but the pupil was pure silver. It was crystal clear, like a piece of crystal with perfect texture. However, when looking at this eye, there was always a slight dizziness, even accompanied by a little stinging. Then, Tang Liu raised his hand and slowly pressed the eye on his right eye. The blue light of the Howlin mark wrapped around the blood-red eye, turning into a slightly overbearing stream of light, and merged into Tang Liu's right eye. He closed his eyes slightly. At the same time, a strange green light lit up around Tang Liu's left eye socket. Those lights gathered around his left eye to form a pattern like a flame. The slightly flickering light was like the flame was gently leaping. At the moment when the green light appeared, the blood-red light that merged into Tang Liu's right eye also emitted light at this time. It emitted a brilliant silver light. Silver thorn-like patterns gradually appeared around Tang Liu's right eye, and the green flame patterns around the left eye were shining. Then, Tang Liu opened his eyes. The left eye turned into a strange green. The right eye turned into an evil blood red, but the pupil was silver. The same thing was that they were now lifeless. It seemed that there was only nothingness. The sea of spirituality was surging, and it was washed by the green and silver red lights at the same time. And with the continuous impact of these two lights, the sea of spirituality was also expanding. The seawater inside was also becoming deeper and deeper, until the consciousness completely sank into the dark seabed. It was no longer possible to see anything. In the darkness, a ball of light suddenly lit up in front of his eyes. At first glance, it seemed to be just a very ordinary ball of light. But after a closer look, it was found that this ball of light was composed of countless mysterious runes. It was like a set of words composed of a unique code, which eventually gathered and evolved into the ball of light in front of him now. Then, a voice came from the ball of light. "Who are you?" He was slightly stunned. "What do you remember?" He opened his mouth, but in the end, he didn't speak. Although the voice asked a question, it didn't let him answer, but instead said the answer himself next. "You are not from this world, you are the real person from this world, you don't need to remember anything. Because all memories have been deeply rooted in your soul." The voice disappeared. The light in front of him suddenly became several times stronger, turning his eyes into pure white. Then, all the pure white turned into a small room. A fool picked up an old yellowed book on the bed. Then the fool died. But he opened his eyes in another world. Several years and months. The first turning point was when a small grass and a hammer appeared on his left and right hands respectively. Time key point, The 6th year of the character line, the system automatically repaired and restarted. The second turning point was a morning when he went out. Time key point, the 6th year of the character line, the cross-dimensional paging function was forced to start. Silence, spoke to the mission target for the first time, then several more years and months passed. Critical time point. 12th year of character line, second interdimensional paging. Silence, choose to start teaching. Critical time point. 12th year of character line, third interdimensional paging. Silence, first formal conversation with a mission target. The system is forced to shut down offline. Critical time point. 14th year of character line, important items are recovered, and the system is temporarily online. Critical time point. 14th year of character line, the system is restarted, and key items lose their functions. Rays of light converged in front of his eyes, and each place where the rays of light intersected formed a node. Each node represents an event, and what was presented in front of him was a critical event. Each critical event represents a most important time point. And what did he do at that corresponding time node? His eyes gradually went away with the intertwined rays of light, but the nodes after that were blurred, and even the rays behind them themselves were a little unclear. Until his eyes reached the farthest point, he could see where the rays of light seemed to have no end. A dark door appeared in his field of vision. At the moment when this door appeared, another node became clear. Key point in time, in the 21st year of the character line, the dimension door opens, and the mission target is recognized by silencer. His eyes naturally fell on the door. Staring at the door, his mood began to fluctuate. As long as he stepped through the door, it seemed that he would get some surprise. But he hesitated. It seemed that something was still restraining him, preventing him from going through. "Don't you want to come in and take a look?" a voice came from the dark door. After entering, nothing happened. He took a step forward. All the lights dimmed quickly. Then he took back his steps. Then all the lights lit up again. Laughter came from inside the door. "Going back is because of your reluctance and unfinished business, then why take a step forward?" He thought for a moment and said, "I just feel that someone wants me to do this." That voice sounded, "The past drives the present to say goodbye to the past? There's something. However, since you have chosen it, don't let me down." Tang Liu, when those two words exploded in his ears, all the memories came like a tide. But before he could slow down, the voice came out from the door again. "Since your mental power has reached the standard in this world, I will teach you something now." The dark door in front of him, all the light, disappeared at this moment. Only a blue mysterious rune remained. It gradually shrank. Finally, it fell on a very small unit. Marked it. The surroundings gradually lit up. Countless blue mysterious runes. Countless tiny targets marked by blue runes. It exploded again with a bang and turned into the scene in front of him. Mindu. Chapter 310, Treasure Basin Number 1. 2 years later. Douluo continent. In just a few years, the situation of the two empires dividing one side no longer exists. The Xiandao Empire was attacked by the Spirit Hall and lost most of its territory. Then, the Spirit Hall announced the establishment of the Spirit Empire. The Xingluo Empire, which is also one of the empires, has disappeared for some reason in the past few years, and it seems that its national strength is gradually declining. However, not many people know that the Spirit Hall in the Xingluo Empire is also gradually disappearing. Of course, the power developed by the Spirit Hall in recent years is mostly in the Xiandao Empire, and there are not many Spirit Halls in the Xingluo Empire. Therefore, it seems that no one cares about the Spirit Halls in Xingluo. What happened to them now? After the establishment of the Spirit Empire, it temporarily stopped the pace of aggression. But anyone can see that the Spirit Hall has the strength to annihilate the Xiandao Empire in one fell swoop. But now that it has stopped, does it mean that the Spirit Hall has some other conspiracy? It's so hard to guess. Su Yu shook his head and said. Su Chen still didn't show much expression, but he still said to his sister, "No need to suspect, just wait for the arrangement." Su Yu complained, "But we have been waiting for 3 years. The captain doesn't allow us to get the spirit ring, and doesn't come to pick us up. There is no news yet. I am bored here and almost moldy." A few years later, Su Yu and Su Chen's cultivation is still at the level of 50 soul sect. Since Tang Liu never allowed them to get their own spirit rings, the two of them could only maintain this level of cultivation and wander around the Douluo continent. However, the cultivation of soul sect is nothing in the current Douluo continent, especially since they are still in the Wuhan Empire. Before, The two of them might have been able to fight soul saints with their martial soul fusion skills. But now, the Wuhan Empire may have more than 100 soul saints, so the two of them can only keep a low profile and have been hiding in the Wuhan Empire for several years. In addition to daily inquiries and endless cultivation, there is nothing else to do. After all, Tang Liu only told them to monitor Jinringsu and raid the Douluo palace, but never mentioned when he would come to pick them up. Before receiving instructions, the two dared not act rashly, so they had to settle down for the time being. However, this kind of life is not too peaceful after all. After all, they raided the Douluo palace, and although they did not cause any substantial damage to the Douluo palace, they were still listed as wanted targets by the Spirit Hall. Therefore, the two had to move to another safe point from time to time to avoid being discovered by the Spirit Hall. However, such avoidance is ultimately futile, because as long as they do not leave the sphere of influence of the Spirit Empire, there will inevitably be a day when they will be discovered. Even if the two people's spirits are special, there will always be some high-level spirit masters who can restrain them and find their traces. And what they have to do is to prolong the time they are found as much as possible, until Tang Liu comes to pick them up. However, that day always seems to be a little far away. Mingdu, Zishan. This mountain is not very big. Not as big as the mountain range that stretches for thousands of miles where Haoshan Fort is located. But inside the west mountain of Mingdu, there is a sparkling lake. The blue lake reflects the sunlight from the sky, and there seems to be some unclear beautiful pictures flickering, and then disappears quietly. I don't know how deep the lake is. Because, although the lake water is clear, you can't see the bottom. Even at the edge of the lake. Although the West Mountain is the only mountain around the entire Mingdu, it is rarely visited by people. Therefore, the mountains are lush with trees, flowers and grass, and there are birds and insects from time to time. But it always gives people an extremely weird feeling. Although there has been no substantial legend, the people of Mingdu are very taboo to go to this mountain. The only one who knows some of the secrets hidden in the West Mountain may be the royal family of the Sun and Moon Empire. Even the royal family of the Sun and Moon Empire knows very little about the secrets hidden in the West Mountain. But among the secrets they know, there is the most important point. The method to open the secret. In every dimension, there are some blessed caves and treasure basins that are naturally nurtured by heaven and earth. The two are actually the same in essence, but in this dimension, the status of the treasure basin is higher than that of the blessed caves. In different dimensions, the status of the two is also different, and even in some dimensions, the two are actually the same concept. However, whether it is a blessed cave or a treasure basin, they have one thing in common, that is, there must be opportunities and adventures hidden in them. However, compared to the blessed cave, the treasure basin is usually fatally dangerous to humans, unlike the blessed cave, which is completely beneficial to humans. Now, in this world, there are 3 known and recorded treasure basins. And now, we are standing at the entrance of Kyankan Valley, which ranks first among the 3 treasure basins. Before there is an external force, Kyankan Valley will only remain hidden. At this time, the state of this treasure basin is very similar to the state after I use the virtual spirit to exile you to upgrade your dimension, and it cannot be discovered by everything in this world. Once the Kyankan Valley of Love is triggered, at the moment of its opening, all humans in the West Mountain will be pulled into it at the same time and undergo the test. However, in order to open the Kyankan Valley of Love, a pair of lovers are needed. A pair of lovers who betray each other. The blood of this pair of lovers who betray each other must all flow into the lake. The bodies of this pair of lovers who betrayed each other must sink to the bottom of the lake forever as the key to open the Kyankan Valley of Love. Looking at the blue lake in front of him, Tang Liu turned his back to Mu Jing, Yi Lingling and Lu Qifeng, and quietly told them everything about the Kyankan Valley of Love. It's not that there are no lovers who betray each other, but some are too hard to find. So, we can use human nature to make them betray each other on their own initiative. Then he turned around, looking serious. This is the key point, remember it. Knowing this, you can find a corresponding way to stop the enemy before he does such a thing, or even use human nature to counter their plan. Do you understand? Also, I'm not telling you this to let you learn and apply it. If we want to get in, we just need to do this. As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his hands, and a rich blue light condensed between his hands and bloomed in his eyes. At the same time, 7 circles of soul rings rose from the soles of his feet and then condensed into a circle of soul rings. Then, the faint blue light mist turned into a circle of light as he waved his hands, spreading across the entire lake. The number of daily updates depends on how much free time I have. Except for Monday, there is at least one chapter every day. Finally, thank you all for your unswerving friends. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 311, Cardbug. In the eyes of Mu Jing and the other two, it was the light of the Hyaolin magic that they were familiar with, which filled the entire lake in an instant. Apart from this, there was no other phenomenon. In Tang Liu's own perception, the water in the entire lake, every water molecule, he was marked with a Hyaolin mark in an instant. In other words, he could control all the water in the lake at will with these Hyaolin marks. Naturally, he could also rely on the control of the lake water to open the Kyankan questioning love valley without sacrificing a pair of lovers who betrayed each other. To open the Kyankan questioning love valley, the blood of lovers who betrayed each other was needed to trigger it. And the Kyankan questioning love valley senses whether there is blood injected, relying on all the lake water in this lake. Therefore, what Tang Liu needs to do is to control all the water molecules, making these water molecules think that they have recognized the blood of a pair of lovers who betrayed each other, so as to deceive the Kyankan questioning love valley and open it. The blue light released in the lake and from Tang Liu's eyes became stronger and stronger. Until, the water in the lake, in an instant, turned into a mysterious and beautiful gold and silver color. Tang Liu just took back the Hyaolin magic, and all the blue light disappeared. After that, Tang Liu immediately turned around and said to his team members, "Remember, after entering, no matter what, just tell the truth." The three team members nodded. Tang Liu also nodded slightly, then turned around again and looked at the lake that began to release thick fog continuously. There was one thing he didn't tell his team members. That is, Kyankan questioning Love Valley, as the #1 treasure basin in the entire Douluo continent worldview, is directly connected to the God realm. In other words, if the gods in the God realm are willing, they can directly intervene in the tests being carried out in Kyankan questioning Love Valley. However, not all gods are like Tang San in the future, who pays special attention to the situation in Kyankan questioning Love Valley for his daughter and heir. All gods in the God realm have their own work to complete, so as to maintain the stability of the several worlds managed by the God realm. For them, a small place like Kyankan Wenking Valley would not attract their attention even if it was opened. Moreover, the attention of the 5 god kings in the God realm is mostly focused on the Sea God Island, Douluo Hall, and Wuhan Hall. How could Tang Liu not seize such a good opportunity? As long as the 5 god kings in the God realm do not intervene, Tang Liu can take the initiative and use the hide of Haolan's magic to influence the rules and mechanisms of Kyankan Wenking Valley. After all, the gods in the God realm will not always have time to govern Kyankan Wenking Valley, but there are always people in Douluo continent who enter Kyankan Wenking Valley from time to time. In the Douluo continent, only 1 day has passed in the God realm. Although, for people in Douluo continent, people who can enter Kyankan Wenking Valley may only meet once every few decades, but for the gods in the God realm, a wave of humans enter Kyankan Wenking Valley every few days, and they have to deal with the affairs of Kyankan Wenking Valley every few days. Once or twice, it can be said to relieve the boredom of the boring gods, but if it happens too often, it will be annoying. After all, compared with the trivial matter of Kyankan Wenking Valley, there are more and more important things, such as some alien species born in the world, with god-level strength but no god position, and may threaten the God realm, waiting for them to deal with. Therefore, Kyankan Wenking Valley must have a set of rules that can operate on its own, just like an extremely smart artificial intelligence, maintaining the normal operation of Kyankan Wenking Valley without the intervention of gods. However, no matter how smart the operating rules are, as long as it is still just a set of rules, Tang Liu can modify it to a certain extent. For example, let Kyankan Wenking Valley ask the questions that Tang Liu wants it to ask. And, after each round of links, customize the rewards and punishments for the participants. In short, the bug of Kyankan Wenking Valley has been blocked by Haolan magic, and Tang Liu does not believe that this cannot catch up with the progress of the God test. It has been 3 years since I came to the Sun-Moon continent. Calculating the time, in another year, Tang San will leave the Sea God Island. At that time, Tang San will almost achieve the position of Sea God and participate in the final battle of the 4 gods. and Tang Liu's goal is to upgrade all of his team members to the 95th level before that. I believe that with a reward system of Kyankan asking Love Valley, this goal should be easy to achieve. However, with only the strength of 95 levels, it is still difficult to be at ease in the battle of gods. Therefore, Tang Liu still needs to think carefully about how to make his team members break through the limit of 100 levels, and have strength that is not weaker than that of gods without the position of gods. However, there is no rush for these now. For now, let's finish what needs to be done in Kyankan asking Love Valley first. The thick fog spread very quickly, and almost in the blink of an eye, it encompassed the entire lake. Soon after, several people on the shore were also covered by the thick fog. At this time, Tang Liu said to the three people behind him, "Now you try, can you fly?" The three people had no doubts, and they all activated their soul power that had reached the soul saint level in their bodies, trying to make themselves float. However, as soon as the feeling of floating in the air came, a greater pressure came from the thick fog surrounding them, pressing them to the ground. Mu Jing understood Tang Liu's intention. Once this Kyankan questioning Love Valley is opened, all humans in Zishan will no longer be able to leave, right? Tang Liu nodded slightly and said, "That's right. In addition, your sense of direction will be completely lost in this fog, and all detection methods will be greatly weakened in this thick fog and will not be able to play any role, which means that you will never be able to leave Zishan. Then, at the moment when Kyankan questioning Love Valley is fully opened, you will be pulled into the bottom of the lake and begin the test. If you want to leave Kyankan questioning Love Valley, you must either leave Zishan before being completely covered by this thick fog, or complete the test of Kyankan questioning Love Valley and be sent out voluntarily, otherwise you will never be able to leave Kyankan questioning Love Valley until you die." The three of them were stunned, but their expressions were very calm. Obviously, they were already somewhat insensitive to this level of danger. Tang Liu was a little disappointed that he didn't see his team members showing some surprise, but this also proved that his training of his team members was still very effective. However, if he continued to train like this, wouldn't his team members all become emotionless assassins? Tang Liu became a little worried again. Chapter 312 Where Does Love Come From? When the thick fog from the lake completely enveloped the entire West Mountain, it was the moment when Kyankan asking Love Valley was completely opened. When that moment came, several people only felt a flash in front of their eyes, and their brains were instantly in a dizzy state. When their senses recovered, they found that they were already at the bottom of a lake. Although they were at the bottom of the lake, they were not affected by the lake water and could breathe freely like they were on land. This was entirely due to a transparent bubble that wrapped around them. Because of the existence of this bubble, they were not affected by the surrounding lake water. However, this bubble not only isolated the lake water, but also isolated the sound and even their mental power. This was probably set up to limit their ability to communicate with each other. However, although the sound was isolated, their vision was not affected at all. Therefore, several people can communicate with each other through lip language, so they are not affected at all. Now, Mu Jing, Yi Lingling and Lu Qiufang are more curious about what the test of Kyankan asking Love Valley will be like, and what kind of rewards they will be given if they pass it. They remember Tang Liu's words, "Just tell the truth." Then, is the so-called test of Kyankan asking Love Valley just a simple question and answer? The three of them didn't think so. Although they had never heard of the treasure basin before, it didn't prevent their strong intuition as high-level soul masters from constantly giving warnings. In addition, Tang Liu told them about Kyankan asking Love Valley, such as the method of opening Kyankan asking Love Valley. In short, all this showed one thing. The test of Kyankan asking Love Valley is not as simple as asking questions and answering. The three of them looked at Tang Liu at the same time. Tang Liu was standing quietly in the bubble at this time, with his eyes closed, his expression calm, as if he was concentrating on feeling something. At this time, the bottom of the lake suddenly changed dramatically. First, the surrounding lake water turned into gold and silver, and then a huge round platform slowly condensed in the gold and silver lake water. When the golden and silver round platform was fully formed, the bubbles carrying several people started to move at the same time, slowly drifting towards the round platform, and finally evenly distributed on the periphery of the round platform. Then, a golden and silver light curtain was emitted from the round platform, separating each bubble. Mu Jing, Yi Lingling, and Lu Qiufang all looked solemn after seeing this situation. This time, their vision was also affected, and it can be said that they completely lost the ability to communicate with each other. So what will happen next? They heard a gentle voice at the same time, which could not be distinguished between men and women. This voice said in an extremely calm tone without any emotional ups and downs, "Jin Kun Wen Qing, the true adventure begins." At this time, Tang Liu suddenly opened his eyes, and a blue light flashed in the depths of his pupils. A golden and silver light began to rotate and flicker rapidly above the round platform, like an erotic spotlight. At first, the golden and silver light rotated very fast, and gradually slowed down as time went by. Finally, it stopped above the bubble where Tang Liu was, dyeing the transparent bubble into golden and silver. Then, the bubble covering Tang Liu disappeared. At this time, the blue light in Tang Liu's eyes became brighter, and then he whispered, "What's your name?" Then, the peaceful voice that could not be distinguished between men and women rang out, "What's your name?" Tang Liu's lips slightly raised, and then he answered, "My name is Tang Liu." After he answered, the peaceful voice continued, "First round, sincerity, pass." The next moment, Tang Liu was once again enveloped in the bubble. According to the normal process, he should have been teleported to the next round. However, if it was according to the normal process, the first question asked by the voice should also be, "Do you have a lover?" Asking a question like "What's your name?" is obviously unreasonable. Because, from beginning to end, it was Tang Liu who controlled the voice to ask questions. The golden and silver mist on the round platform could not block Tang Liu's sight, so under the operation of the dark box, the golden and silver light now turned to the bubble where Lu Qiufeng was. Tang Liu smiled, then coughed lightly and said, "Do you have a lover?" After that, the blue light in his eyes flickered again. The next moment, Lu Qiufeng heard that peaceful voice saying to him, "Do you have a lover?" Lu Qiufeng was stunned for a moment, then remembered what Tang Liu said about telling the truth. Then he remembered that this place was called Kyankan Asking Love Valley. Finally, another figure appeared in his mind. Just a few thoughts flashed through his mind, and 3 or 4 seconds had passed in the outside world. Logically speaking, that peaceful voice would not give so much time to those who entered Kyankan Asking Love Valley, but would repeat the questions constantly and remind the punishment for not answering after 3 questions is death. But now, that peaceful voice is controlled by Tang Liu, so there is no need to rush at all. Tang Liu can give his team members more time. Then, Lu Qiufeng answered, "Yes." Tang Liu's expression straightened up, ready to listen to gossip. "Who is she?" A peaceful voice followed, "Who is she?" Lu Qiufeng did not get stunned this time, and answered very straightforwardly, "Yi Lingling." At this time, Kyankan Asking Love Valley began its own process. Without Tang Liu's control, the bubble where Yi Lingling was flew over and stopped not far in front of Lu Qiufeng. After that, the bubble disappeared, and Yi Lingling could now hear the peaceful voice. "Is it her?" Yi Lingling, who suddenly flew over and heard the voice, was still a little confused, but the next moment, she saw Lu Qiufeng looking at her, and then said, "Yes." Before Yi Lingling could react, the voice asked her, "He said you are his lover, right?" Consistent with Lu Qiufeng's reaction, Yi Lingling's first reaction was to tell the truth. Then she thought of this place called Kyankan Asking Love Valley. Finally, she also looked at the boy not far ahead who had been staring at her. The boy who only dared to follow him secretly is now 2 heads taller than her. Obviously, they were still about the same when they first met. Whenever I want to update properly, there are always some unexpected accidents that prevent me from updating continuously. For example, today's physical test, and yesterday's paper. Also, the author is so useless, he only did 1 pull-up hhhhh, this is really difficult. Okay. Do you have any friends who are super good at sports? For example, a macho man who can do a dozen pull-ups easily, lying on the wall to peek. Chapter 313 Everything begins to surface. So when did it start? Perhaps it was during the confrontation with the lower 4 sects. During that period, when they began to gradually destroy and suppress the power of the lower 4 sects, they were hunted down by many of the lower 4 sects masters. However, with Lu Qiufeng's adoptive father, they were able to cope with it at first. However, the lower 4 sects had a large number of people, so they would always be overwhelmed. When Lu Qiufeng's adoptive father was delayed, they had to deal with other opponents whose soul power far exceeded theirs alone. At the beginning, they were only at the level of soul sect. Yi Lingling was an auxiliary soul master with no combat ability, and Lu Qiufeng had a soul ring ratio that was not even up to par. It is conceivable that they had to face many life and death crises at that time. Therefore, at the beginning, Yi Lingling and the others' actions were mainly surprise attacks, and there were very few direct battles. But the occasional siege by the masters of the lower four sects almost cost them half their lives. However, it was under this life-or-death situation that Lu Qiufeng successfully discovered his Jiu Feng's innate ability. By absorbing vitality and soul power, he could improve his cultivation and even the age of his soul rings. When Tang Liu observed Lu Qiufeng, he felt that his setting was somewhat familiar. After thinking about it, he remembered that Lu Qiufeng's martial soul talent was exactly what an evil soul master had. However, a martial soul with the talent of an evil soul master would more or less have some impact on the soul master's mind, otherwise he would not be called an evil soul master by the soul masters of later generations. Lu Qiufeng somehow became an accident. Although he had the talent of an evil soul master, his mind was not affected at all. Tang Liu had guessed. Lu Qiufeng's martial soul was awakened by Tang Jin. As we all know, the Clear Sky Hammer is currently the top weapon martial soul on the Douluo continent. Perhaps the Clear Sky Hammer is not as good as some of the absolute top weapon martial souls, but the majestic and righteous spirit attached to it is also unmatched by many top weapon martial souls. Just like the 7 killing swords of Sword Douluo Chenzin, the murderous aura attached to it is definitely the strongest in the world. But if it is the majestic and righteous aura like a mountain, then the first one must be the Clear Sky Hammer. So, is it possible that when Tang Jin awakened Lu Qiufeng's martial soul, the righteous aura on his Clear Sky Hammer completely suppressed and even purified Qiufeng's evil spirit of evil soul master talent? However, none of this is important now. What is important now is everything in Qiankan Questioning Valley. Without a doubt, Yi Lingling gave a positive answer. And Lu Qiufeng, who heard her answer, seemed to be relieved, and smiled slightly as if he had known it. Tang Liu, who had been eating melons, didn't want to eat more dog food, so he controlled a peaceful voice and said, "First round, sincere, pass." So the next moment, golden light enveloped Lu Qiufeng and Yi Lingling at the same time, and they were about to be teleported to the next round. However, at the moment when the two were about to be teleported away, the golden light that enveloped the two suddenly solidified. The two people who were being teleported also solidified in the golden light. At the same time as the golden light, the space of the entire Qiankan Questioning Valley also solidified. At this moment, Tang Liu felt very clearly that his control over Qiankan Questioning Valley was taken away at this moment. Tang Liu's heart trembled, thinking that it was not good. Could it be that the gods of the God Realm noticed this place? If it was really the gods of the God Realm who took away his control over Qiankan Questioning Valley, then he didn't have to worry. Because the gods of the God Realm could not see what he did to Qiankan Questioning Valley. Even if the gods could directly control Qiankan Questioning Valley, Tang Liu could still slightly influence it in secret without being discovered. But now, Tang Liu felt that he had lost contact with the entire Qiankan Questioning Valley. In other words, the actions he had taken on Qiankan Questioning Valley were cleared away in the instant just now. Now, he is no different from Yu Jing and the others, just a soul master who entered Qiankan Questioning Valley for a test. Tang Liu's intuition told him that Qiankan Questioning Valley has become very dangerous now. This alertness reached its peak the moment a voice came from Qiankan Asking Love Valley. Zizzy. At first, it was like an old-fashioned radio that was searching for a signal. Qiankan Asking Love Valley made an electric sound. Then, the peaceful voice of Qiankan Asking Love Valley became mechanical and said, "Abnormal? Intrusion? Countermeasure failed Zizzy." Then, a male voice sounded. "Hello? Can you hear me?" The moment Tang Liu heard this voice, he subconsciously wanted to teleport everyone away. It was just very abnormal that Heolin's teleportation failed at this time. The teleportation failed. At this moment, only Tang Liu could retain consciousness. The other three were in a state of frozen time, unable to perceive the outside world, and there was no such thing as feeling. I don't know when it started, the entire Qiankan Asking Love Valley began to become mysterious, making Tang Liu feel the biggest threat in his life. It was just this feeling, and that voice, that made him feel inexplicably familiar. It was like every time the system was possessed. The male voice that talked to him. No way. Before, it was all about taking over the system, but now it comes directly to take over the body of Qiankan Wunking Valley? What is the origin of that male voice? Is it the legendary main system? Also, why did he invade Qiankan Wunking Valley? Since he has come to Qiankan Wunking Valley to intervene, what will happen next? Will his joining have an impact on his future plans? After guessing the cause of the changes in Kyankan Valley, Tang Liu quickly calmed down, and then thought about it for a long time, but couldn't come up with any solution. If the gods in the Douluo worldview are 1, then Haolin's spells are more than 50, and the system is 80. And this male voice who often takes over the system may be more than 200. There is no way for Tang Liu to make up for such a gap by planning. After all, he is not a big black bat. Not only can he not win a fight, but it is useless to make an appointment for a fight. So it is inevitable that Tang Liu will worry about the direction of things next. All thoughts flashed and flew in his mind in an instant. Then, Tang Liu heard the male voice saying, "The Kyankan questioning Love Valley is half a dimension higher than Douluo Star and half a dimension lower than the God Realm. So I can use the system in your mind to temporarily affect this place without being discovered by the will here. Of course, this is only temporary. I can't stay here for too long, otherwise this parallel universe will collapse and be destroyed, and then restart," the male voice said to Tang Liu as if chatting. Although his tone was very plain and natural, what he said was enough for Tang Liu to infer a lot of things. After that, the voice explained the purpose of coming. "It's a good idea to block the bug of Kyankan questioning Love Valley, but it's a bit too boring, so I plan to add a little difficulty for you." Tang Liu silently, "Get lost. Of course, I won't let the difficulty soar to an outrageous level, just let everything follow the original rules and add some more interesting links." Tang Liu continued silently, "Give me clues. Oh, by the way, I can read everything you think now, Tang Liu. It's not me. It's the system. You are a magnanimous person, don't bear grudges. Be careful, you will shut down the system again." Tang Liu suddenly replied in his mind, "The system's autism, isn't it you who deliberately arranged it?" Indeed, Tang Liu continued, "The system should not have the function of autism. The only possibility is that it needs more energy to do something, so it temporarily shuts down and puts all the energy into the thing it wants to do, right? Also, why does a programmed system show such a big difference before and after temporary shutdown? Why does it become so human after restarting? It says it is imitating my words and deeds, but my intuition tells me that it is not. Because its words and deeds are very much like a living person, a person who is completely different from me. So, why?" The male voice smiled and said, "Very careful observation, Tang Liu, please answer me." The male voice sounded again, "Yes, these are all what I ask your system to tell you. It is true that it is autistic because it has more important things to do. Also, the reason why its initial mechanization and later humanization are different is that when it brought you here, it was severely damaged, some of its functions failed, and it could only operate mechanically. Then, you had grown up and had a certain ability to protect yourself, so I ordered it to start a comprehensive repair, and then it became autistic and humanized after the restart. The system you know now is what it should be like. It's just that you were not qualified to know these things at the time, so I made up a random excuse to fool you." Tang Liu caught a few key words and asked, "Bring me here?" "So, I didn't travel through time. Indeed, you were brought here by the system. But the people who made the system underestimated the barriers of dimensions. After all, they haven't yet experienced my current height, so when the system was carrying your soul through the barriers between our world and Douluo's universe, it was severely damaged and could only barely bring your soul here. At the same time, it created a body for you, and after settling your soul, it fell into hibernation due to exhaustion of energy. Do you still remember what the system said when you first heard its voice? It said repair successful, not startup successful or binding successful, which proves that it has actually been with you for a long time. In addition, although I successfully brought your soul here, your soul was still injured to a certain extent during the process of crossing the dimensional barrier." Tang Liu understood something. "So I had a fever for so long when I was a child?" "Yes, that was the side effect of the damaged soul. Also, at that time, the energy that the system naturally recovered was used to heal the injury of your soul. It was not until you fully recovered that it began to accumulate energy again. It was not until you awakened your martial soul that it was successfully activated with the power of Haolan magic. Of course, it was not completely repaired at this time, so there was the autism later. Many things were connected in series." Tang Liu suddenly felt like he had been enlightened. When you start to make up for the massive amount of homework that is about to be submitted, you can't help but want to kill yourself who had let go of playing and left all the homework to yourself. Then you find that you still owe a lot of updates. "Yes, this is me." Dog author crying, don't scold, After finishing English homework, November homework will be gone, and December will come soon. Chapter 314. Do you have a lover? He was about to say something when he heard the male voice say, "Okay, that's all I'll tell you now. Don't waste my time, let's get started, I still have a lot of things to deal with." Tang Liu blurted out, "When can I see you?" The next moment he realized that he could speak. The male voice laughed and said, "Soon." After a pause, he continued, "Aren't the preparations you made in the Douluo Empire preparations for seeing me?" After saying this, Kyankan Wanking Valley returned to silence again, and the solidified time and space began to move along the correct track again. The golden light shrouding Lu Qifeng and Yi Lingling became more and more intense until they were teleported away. Before being teleported away, Lu Qifeng heard the voice of a young man talking to himself. "To cultivate with a killing heart? I remember that at about this time, in this universe, there seemed to be a killing god who is about to be destroyed? Then I'll send you there." Similarly, Yi Lingling also heard the voice muttering to himself, "A doctor's heart of compassion? There seems to be no place in this universe where you can practice. You are not qualified to enter my universe now. I'll just give you a medical student's class. How much you can learn depends on yourself, Yi Lingling." In short, the two were sent away from Kyankan Asking Love Valley. After that, the golden light began to rotate again, and finally slowly stopped above Mu Jing's head. The golden bubble wrapped around Mu Jing brought her to the center of the golden round table, and then quietly disappeared in a golden mist. She looked around with a little vigilance, waiting for the next test that might fall on her. Tang Liu, who had lost control of Kyankan Asking Love Valley, could not see or sense anything at the moment, so he didn't know what happened after that existence took over Kyankan Asking Love Valley, nor did he know the current situation of his team members. Judging from everything that the existence has shown so far, it seems harmless to him and his team members. But Tang Liu cannot be sure of the fact that the existence is harmless. The existence is too advanced. Even if the other party's current performance is like a living person. Of course, Tang Liu cannot be sure whether the existence is a human or an anthropomorphic body. Perhaps the other party is just a highly anthropomorphic, high-level intelligence similar to a system. But in any case, in Tang Liu's view, the position of the existence is still unclear. Since it is unclear, it may still pose a threat to them. What's more, it is such an existence whose level seems to be higher than his Haolan magic, so Tang Liu can't help but care about it. However, no matter how urgent he is now, he can't get any news outside the golden mist. It seems that he knows that he may have some backup, so the existence puts most of its attention on him to prevent him from making any unusual moves. As a result, Tang Liu's perception of his own martial spirit is a little unreal now, and he can no longer rely on the power of the martial spirit to do anything. Without being able to contact his martial soul, even if his soul power was not restricted, he could not use soul skills, nor could he break through the power limit of Kyankan Asking Love Valley. After all, his total soul power was not strong enough to directly compete with Kyankan Asking Love Valley. Therefore, Tang Liu could only wait and see, and fell into an awkward situation where he was helpless. At the same time, in the center of the round platform, Mu Jing also heard the voice at this time. The voice said, "Let's go through the process. Do you have a lover?" Mu Jing paused, thinking that she couldn't lie here, so she answered, "No." "Really?" Mu Jing shook her head. "No, don't even have someone you like," Mu Jing said firmly. "No." The voice paused for a moment, and then continued, "In that case, have you ever felt particularly happy?" Mu Jing opened her mouth and was about to answer, but the voice stopped abruptly in her throat. She frowned, then shook her head slowly and answered, "No." The voice smiled gently and continued, "Then let me ask you again, have you ever felt happiness, or do you still remember, what exactly is the feeling of happiness like?" Mu Jing was stunned, and did not respond to the question raised by the voice for a long time. The voice did not urge her, but waited patiently. After a moment, Mu Jing spoke again, "I remember the feeling of happiness, I remember it. When I was very young. But after that feeling, I have never experienced it again. It's just that, after so long, I didn't feel anything wrong at all, until now, not only happiness, but also other emotions and emotional experiences. I don't know since when." She has completely lost the ability to empathize again. Obviously everything is so clear in her memory, but it suddenly becomes so strange. Obviously it seems to be within reach, but it is always across the river, grasping nothing. The question raised by the voice was like a ray of sunlight that suddenly pierced through like a spear, dispelling the heavy fog. As the fog dissipated, some hidden truths revealed their true colors. However, because this so-called truth was still too vague, Mu Jing didn't know whether it was a gorgeous treasure or rotten and smelly minced meat under its disguise. Then tell me, do you want to know why? Why did you lose your sense of emotions, and who took away these feelings from you? Tell me, do you want to know? Mu Jing pondered for a long time, and then said, yes, but before the voice responded, she continued, but I don't want to explore it now. The voice was a little surprised. Oh? Why, Mu Jing, it's just intuition. The voice smiled lightly. Interesting. In this case, I have nothing to ask you. You passed the first level. As soon as the voice fell, the golden light enveloped Mu Jing and teleported her to a place that no one could identify. The strong compete for their hearts. It turns out that she is a rare card in your hand, the voice muttered to itself, and then the last golden bubble on the platform moved and came to the center of the platform. Chapter 315 Second Round. Afterwards, the bubble burst, revealing the figure of Tang Liu. The moment Tang Liu showed up, the voice immediately said, do you have a lover? Tang Liu looked around slowly, then said, where are my teammates? However, he did not get a response, and only heard the voice's words, do you have a lover? If you don't answer 3 times, you will be killed immediately. Tang Liu, no martial ethics. Tang Liu felt that this was targeting him, but now he had no power to resist, so he could only choose to admit defeat. So he quickly answered, no. The voice said, really? Tang Liu nodded firmly, no. A light and shadow slowly condensed in front of Tang Liu, and finally gathered into a human figure. Who is she? Tang Liu frowned and looked at the light and shadow for a long time without saying a word. The voice urged, answer me, who is she? Otherwise, I will kill her immediately. After this, Tang Liu could only helplessly say, Jin Ringsu, what is your relationship with her? Tang Liu replied, she is half an enemy. Is that really all? Really, just an enemy? Tang Liu looked at the tall shadow with big golden waves and skin as translucent as white jade, and his voice sank. Yes, half an enemy. Kyank and Wenking Valley suddenly fell into silence. After a long time, the voice laughed, and then said, get ready for the second round. The shadow Jin Ringsu in front of him dissipated into golden light, rushed towards Tang Liu, and completely enveloped him. After a moment, the golden light flashed, and Tang Liu's figure disappeared along with it. The bottom of the lake instantly became silent. There are countless universes in the boundless darkness, and countless planets full of life in countless universes. The life on each planet is colorful, or similar. Some are ordinary, while others are bizarre. This is a world of the 5 elements. As the golden light flashed, an outsider appeared in the seemingly endless fiery red world. It seemed that the temperature here was extremely high, so that he could not find any other place to stay except the place where he was now. After the golden light sent it here, it disappeared again. No, the golden light did not disappear completely. Instead, it turned into a thin film that was almost invisible to the naked eye, completely attached to his body. He looked at the surrounding environment, especially the endless, bright and fiery red magma below. Perhaps, it was because of the protection of that layer of light golden light that he did not feel how terrible the temperature here was. After a simple look around, he found that there was really nothing here except magma. And the place where he was now was actually a groove on the stone wall. In this way, he speculated that this should be a huge cave, and the bottom of this cave was full of deadly magma. After that, he began to confirm whether his martial soul, soul power, and soul bone could be used normally. Everything was normal. So, what was the second test of Kyank questioning Love Valley? Just when he wanted to fly out to find out the situation around him, a violent vibration suddenly appeared in this space. Wherever he looked, the magma was surging, even setting off huge waves, and countless falling rocks fell from the top, plunging into the surging magma, being vaporized in an instant, and then disappeared. The violent vibration almost shook him down. Although the faint golden light on his body isolated the high temperature of the outside world, he didn't know whether he could be saved in the super high temperature magma. Therefore, he summoned his martial soul at the first time, then caught the martial soul and fixed himself in the groove of the stone wall. The reason why he didn't fly directly was, first, to avoid being hit by a large number of falling rocks, and second, to try not to be discovered by those who caused such a big noise. In the violent vibration, He could only rely on his martial soul to maintain the stability of his body. Qiu Feng pierced deeply into the stone wall. 4 years. He had been training on Seagoat Island for 4 years. Now, the first half of his training was over, and he finally became a soul Douluo and obtained the qualification to inherit the Seagoat throne. Thanks to the Seagoat divine test, he and his companions had made rapid progress in their cultivation. However, his divine test was far from over. He left Seagoat Island this time only because the conditions for completing the next divine test were not on Seagoat Island. While completing the divine test, he could also complete a few things that he had to do. His first destination was the yin-yang eye of ice and fire. Sunset Forest. Su Yu and Su Chen leaned against a big tree to rest in a mess. As the spirit hall's pursuit of them became stronger and stronger, the two people at the soul sect level naturally felt that they were gradually unable to cope. They looked up at the dense forest, their eyes were a little empty. After a long while, Su Yu said, "This is a gathering place for soul beasts." Su Chen did not speak. Su Yu continued, "We should be able to find a fifth soul ring suitable for us here." Su Chen still did not speak. Su Yu retracted her gaze from the dense leaves of the trees above her head, and tilted her head to look at Su Chen beside her. "Hey, what do you think?" Su Chen also retracted his gaze and lowered his eyelids. "Not very good." Su Yu laughed. Just a moment later, she fell into dead silence. After a long time, she spoke again. "They should catch up soon." Su Chen responded indifferently. "Su Yu, I think we can't run away this time. Jin Ringsu wants to capture us in exchange for the captain's whereabouts. That Pope Bibi Dong also wants to capture us to exchange Hulina, Ju, Ghost Douluo and others." Su Chen said him. "Su Yu, if they catch up with us, you should leave first, and I will hold them off for you. The light in this forest is too dim, and your martial spirit can thrive here. Moreover, your martial spirit is more like Grandpa's, so the chance of running away is greater. When the time comes, you can ask Grandpa to avenge me." Su Chen glanced at her, and then said, "Okay." Su Yu immediately glared at him. "Hey, are you really going to abandon me and run away?" Su Chen's mouth curled up for a rare time. "Why don't you guess?" Su Yu rolled her eyes. "I don't want to pay attention to you." Su Chen took a deep breath, then stood up and stretched out his hand to Su Yu. "Let's keep going. They should be finding us soon." Long-lost small theater, Kaiankan asked the Valley of Love, "Do you have a lover?" Tang Liu, unwavering, "No." Kaiankan asked the Valley of Love, "Then who is he?" Tang Liu looked at the light and shadow of Tang San in front of him, and slowly typed out a comma. Kaiankan asked the Valley of Love, "Then what about him?" Tang Liu looked at the shadow of Daimyu Bay next to Tang San and continued, Kaiankan asked Kingu, "And him?" Tang Liu looked at the newly appeared shadow of Fengzia Ocean. Kaiankan asked Kingu, "And him?" Tang Liu, question mark? "That's too much. Why did you let my dad in?" Kaiankan asked Kingu, "So which one of them is your lover?" Tang Liu, blushing, "Can I choose all of them?" Kaiankan asked Kingu. Chapter 316, Multiple Intertwining Threads. Su Yu complained, "Really? They rely on their high cultivation and more physical strength than us to catch up so fast. I haven't rested enough. When I get a new spirit ring, I will definitely teach them a lesson." She held Su Chen's hand and stood up with the help of her strength. The two continued to walk towards the depths of the sunset forest. All her senses seemed to disappear for a moment. But when her senses came back, she found that a strong sense of suffocation invaded her. She opened her eyes suddenly and found that she was actually in a blue lake. She immediately circulated the spirit power in her body and replaced breathing with internal breath. However, when she wanted to release her martial spirit, she failed. Just when she was still wondering whether she had left Kaiankan Wenking Valley, she found that her body began to fall uncontrollably to the bottom of the lake. The mud and algae were like tentacles, slowly sweeping towards her, and finally pulling her into the bottomless mud at the bottom of the lake. And she watched quietly. The vibration finally stopped gradually. But two powerful forces began to spread everywhere in this fiery red space. The first thing Lu Qifeng felt was a wave of burning heat. This heat wave was full of masculine energy at one moment, and seemed to be tainted with some femininity at another moment. In addition, there seemed to be a faint fragrance mixed in the heat wave. But what Lu Qifeng felt more deeply was the trace of cold breath hidden in the heat wave. In this space full of fire elements, this cold breath was naturally very unusual. Moreover, this cold breath also made him feel very familiar. He glanced at the Qiu Feng tightly held in his hand and confirmed the true face of the cold breath. Murderous aura. Very strong murderous aura. And in this hot place, he could still feel a trace of coldness. Then the owner of this murderous aura must have super strength. And it is very likely that it is so strong that he can't imagine it. He hesitated for a moment, but still flew cautiously against the rolling heat wave towards the two opposite energy explosions. Unexpectedly, it was not dark under the mud. Of course, perhaps she teleported without noticing while crossing the mud. Otherwise, why would there be another forest at the bottom of the lake? The life energy here is so dense that it almost forms a materialized cloud. A casual breath can easily prolong one's life. When she slowly landed on the soft grass, she found that the control of her body had returned to her hands. A few strands of her hair were still wet on her cheeks because they had just passed through the lake, but they were not stained with a trace of mud. And she didn't care, just looked around vigilantly. However, the state of being soaked all over might be too uncomfortable, so she summoned her martial spirit and evaporated all the water on her clothes and hair. Her control over the water element was very delicate. Without causing too much noise, she also evaporated all the lake water very quickly. When she retracted her martial spirit and began to look around carefully, a golden light flew out from nowhere, like a dense number of fireflies in the dark night, separating and closing, and converging into an arrow pointing in the direction not far from her. The golden light looked familiar, just like the unique light of the Kyankan questioning Love Valley that teleported her here. She thought that this should be the second round of test for her from Kyankan questioning Love Valley, so she followed carefully, trying not to make too much noise. Although she didn't know where this place was, it must be full of unknown dangers to be chosen by Kyankan questioning Love Valley as the place for her second round of test. Of course, she also had a very bad premonition. Although this place seemed to be full of vitality, because of the rich life energy that filled this place, it was too quiet. It seemed that no living creature appeared in this forest. Following the guidance of the golden arrow all the way, she found that the surrounding trees became more and more dense, so the sunlight that could reach the ground through the leaves gradually decreased. Until the end, there was only darkness in the forest. Only the golden arrow in front of her slightly illuminated the way forward for her. I don't know how long she walked, so long that her heart began to gradually become depressed. The golden arrow that had been leading the way in front suddenly stopped, and then made a 90-degree turn. After walking for a while, it turned back to the previous direction. She was a little confused, but she followed it anyway. Then when she turned around, she saw a creeping figure from the corner of her eye. Although the forest had become extremely dark, the huge shadow was slightly revealing a red light. Since her soul power was not restricted, she could basically see the appearance of the figure. It seemed to be a dog with a red body. But this dog had 3 heads at the same time. At the same time, the faint breath emanating from it also made her feel terrified. She immediately retracted her gaze and hurriedly followed a golden arrow. However, after a while, the golden arrow circled again like before, as if it was specifically guiding her to avoid some powerful existence. This time, it was a towering tree that exuded a strong stench. And the breath emanating from this tree was even stronger than the previous 3-headed dog. It almost made her stand unsteady. After that, the golden arrow circled again, and this time she saw a giant bear as big as a mountain. Just passing by the giant bear, she felt as if her whole body was torn apart. In fact, she was several kilometers away from the giant bear. From the moment she entered this strange forest until now, she had become increasingly uneasy. This uneasiness reached its peak when she followed a golden arrow around the giant bear and saw a huge lake. Because, not far from her, a huge black dragon head with a height of 100 meters was quietly looking at her. Her breathing and heartbeat almost stopped in an instant. Everything in her eyes seemed to disappear, leaving only the huge dragon head. In a trance, the dragon head seemed to open its eyes, revealing 2 points of fascinating golden light that almost killed her. She took a step back and gasped violently. Then she found that the golden eyes on the dragon head were just her illusion. But in just a short moment, her forward and back were already soaked with sweat. Chapter 317, The Might of the Fierce Beast Earth Core Haoshin. Even the soul power in her body was almost consumed. She looked at the huge black dragon head in horror, but quickly retracted her gaze. Even though the illusion just now was only a short moment, she didn't want to experience it again. Moreover, it might awaken the unknown black dragon head. She looked at the lake in front of her, calmed her breathing and heartbeat, and never dared to look at the huge black dragon head again. At this time, The golden arrow also plunged into the lake. She gritted her teeth and jumped into the lake. This is the test of Kyankin Valley, and if she wants to leave here safely, she can only follow the guidance of the arrow. But along the way, the creatures she saw were stronger the closer they were to the lake. So, what kind of existence will the golden arrow lead her to see in the end? Lu Qiufeng flew carefully towards the center of the two energy explosions. The closer he got to the center, the more obvious the two energies, one hot and one cold, became in his senses. However, for some reason, these two energies did not seem to be fully released, and they were suppressed, as if they were afraid that something would be destroyed. However, although these two forces were suppressed and not fully released, Lu Qiufeng could feel that once these two energies were completely released, they would be enough to destroy the world. At the same time, Lu Qiufeng also found that the closer he got to the center of the explosion of the two energies, the greater the resistance he encountered. Perhaps, if it were not for the golden light of Kyankin Valley that protected him, he would not have been able to come here at all. Even, the moment he appeared here, he would have been directly melted by the terrifying high temperature here. After moving forward for a while, Lu Qiufeng vaguely saw a white gold and a red bright spot appearing in front of him. All his senses told him that the source of the two energies was the two light spots in front. Lu Qiufeng clenched Yufeng, slightly increased his speed, and quickly approached the place where the two light spots were. As the distance gradually approached, the two energies became stronger and stronger. Soon after, he finally saw the true face of the two light spots. The white gold light spot was actually a tall man wearing golden armor and with golden wings on his back. The red light spot was a stunning woman in a fiery red dress. A pressure that made Lu Qiufeng feel suffocated quickly swept his entire soul after he saw the true faces of the two people. In Lu Qiufeng's feeling, any one of the two people could easily kill him in seconds. After feeling this, Lu Qiufeng did not move forward, just floating in place, quietly watching the two people fight. At this time, his eyes suddenly lit up, the kind of strange golden light that belonged to Kyankin Valley. Then, he heard the voice in Kyankin Valley ringing in his ears. Second round of assessment, absorb the consciousness of the second-level gods, the killing gods Upris, and strengthen Yufeng, Lu Qiufeng. That was the muffled sound of the corpse falling to the ground. So you could no longer remember how many spirit masters of the spirit hall they had killed. But the remaining spirit masters of the spirit hall were so many that they could kill them. As for her and Su Chen, they were like bowstrings about to break. Su Chen was still using the little remaining soul power in his body to desperately kill the spirit masters of the spirit hall who came to hunt them down. However, he could not hold on for much longer. Now, they were almost unable to resist the ordinary spirit masters of the spirit hall. If they delayed for a while longer, the spirit saints and soul doulous of the spirit hall would soon arrive. Once that time came, they would really not be able to escape. Now, what should they do? If they were caught by the spirit hall, what would be their fate? Maybe, the spirit hall would not hurt their lives because of Hulina, Ju, and Ghost Douluo. But Bibi Dong and Jinring Su were both people they could not figure out, and no one knew what would happen to them after they were caught by the spirit hall. Perhaps, they would really be gone forever. There was no news from Tang Liu now, and perhaps there was no way for him to arrive in time to save them. Could it be that they really had to surrender? Su Yu closed his eyes, and then, because of the complete overdraft of soul power, he fell to the ground. No, absolutely not. Su Chen desperately resisted the attack of a spirit master of the spirit hall, and saw Su Yu fall from the corner of his eye. He gritted his teeth and let out a dull roar from his throat. Just as he was about to repel the spirit master of the spirit hall who attacked him, a residual image suddenly rushed over. He waved a palm at him lightly. The palm did not even touch him directly. Just the airwave was directly knocked Su Chen out, and he broke several trees in succession before finally falling heavily to the ground. Blood kept pouring out of his mouth, and his vision was a little blurred. But even so, he could still clearly see the 9 circles of soul rings surrounding the person who attacked him. Title Douluo. It seems that they are really going to die here today. Before losing consciousness, Su Chen thought of it for the last time. The title Douluo of the Spirit Hall, who came over, glanced at the fallen Su Yu and Su Chen indifferently, and then said to the Spirit Hall spirit masters around, tie them up and return to the Spirit Hall. In addition, send someone back to report to the Pope and the Saint that the person they want has been captured. The Spirit Hall spirit masters around responded respectfully, and then each divided the work and acted. Two Spirit Hall Spirit Masters walked towards Su Yu and Su Chen respectively, ready to tie them up and take them away. However, just when they were about to touch Su Yu and Su Chen, a strong gust of wind suddenly hit, and instantly passed over the two Spirit Hall Spirit Masters. The bodies of the two Spirit Hall Spirit Masters stiffened instantly, and soon after, cracks appeared on their exposed skin. Blood, mixed with meat, and some unknown paste-like objects, slowly slipped out of these cracks. At the same time, blood and a paste formed by damaged internal organs flowed out of their 7 orifices. Then, they fell to the ground. They didn't even see who attacked them, and in just a moment, they lost their lives. The titled Douluo of the Spirit Hall immediately looked in one direction with vigilance. No one responded to him. Only a few extremely heavy black rays flew out from the depths of the forest, and in an instant, all the low-end Spirit Masters of the Spirit Hall were wiped out. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 318, The Dragon King God's Yin-Yang Eyes of Ice and Fire. The face of the titled Douluo of the Spirit Hall changed drastically. He looked at the direction of the black light in horror and shouted in anger, "Who is it?" A very eye-catching blood-red light shone in the depths of the forest. Then, a young man came out with a huge black iron hammer. He looked at the titled Douluo of the Spirit Hall indifferently. "Want to catch these two little guys?" "Dream on," the titled Douluo of the Spirit Hall screamed in disbelief, with horror and fear. Tang Hao, the golden arrow guided her to continue going down. Soon, she reached the bottom of the center of the lake. Since she couldn't use her soul power to directly replace normal breathing, she had to summon her spirit, push away the water elements around her, and extract some air from the water for her breathing. This was taught to her by Tang Liu after she obtained the 7th spirit ring and spent a year in Mengdu. In short, after she could breathe normally, she could continue to follow the golden arrow without any worries. Finally, the golden arrow took her to the bottom of the lake, and then turned into golden light and scattered, and finally gathered on her body, turning into a light film, wrapping her whole body. After that, she found that she seemed to be able to breathe directly, no longer relying on oxygen extracted from the water. So, she tentatively withdrew her martial soul. The lake water around her, which was pushed away by her control, gathered again the next moment. But the lake water could not touch her, and was all blocked by the golden film. She checked to see if her various abilities were restricted by this layer of golden light. In the end, she found that this layer of golden light only protected her from the invasion of the lake water and allowed her to breathe freely in the water, without restricting her abilities. So, she turned and began to observe the surroundings. Since the golden arrow disappeared, it means that she has reached her destination. And the second round of test of Kyankan Wenking Valley for her should be nearby. She chose a direction and prepared to go over to take a look. However, just after taking a step, her body became extremely stiff and she was completely unable to move. At this moment, an unprecedented and extremely huge sense of crisis has completely enveloped her. It is even stronger than before when she saw the huge black dragon head. She just felt that a kind of pressure that she could not describe at all had locked her tightly. All she could do now was to slightly turn her eyes. Then, she saw the lake in the distance beside her. A huge purple eye. Looking at her quietly. She was once again completely surrounded by the feeling of suffocation. Lu Qifeng never thought that he would be able to see such a spectacular battle in his life. Before this, he always thought that the simple fight between Tang Liu and the Evil Eye Tyrant Master would be the highest level of battle he had ever seen in his life. But now, the battle in front of him directly refreshed his horizons. Because this is a battle between gods. But how can he absorb the consciousness of the killing god to achieve the purpose of strengthening his Jiufeng? He is just a soul saint. How can he beat a second-level god? He, who has always been calm, can't help but feel like he is going to be bald. While he was thinking about the solution, the two gods in front of him started a new round of fighting. The cold murderous intent and the hot fire element once again began to collide with each other in this space full of magma. Just when Lu Qifeng thought that the two gods would just test each other like the previous collisions. Suddenly, the power emanating from the killing god increased several times. At the same time, a huge, crystal-clear fiery red lotus appeared behind the woman in the red skirt. Lu Qifeng was shocked, and then he realized that the two gods should have a final duel and began to fight desperately. Then, his first reaction was that his chance might have come. So he began to quickly approach the two gods, but kept a distance that was not easy for the two gods to immediately discover. Of course, maybe the two gods had already discovered him a long time ago, but because they had to concentrate on dealing with each other's attacks, they had no time to pay attention to him for the time being. Once the two gods decided the winner, perhaps, it would be his death. After all, he couldn't be sure what the attitude of these two gods was towards him, an uninvited guest. However, it seemed that no matter which of these two gods, they would not let him go easily. Moreover, for a god, it was probably easier to kill him than to crush an ant. But if he didn't complete the second round of the test in Kyankin Valley, he might never be able to go back. Then Lu Qiufeng thought with a solemn expression, and then clenched Yu Feng in his hand. Success or failure depends on this one move. Yin-yang eye of ice and fire. Tang Hao casually placed Su Yu and Su Chen on an empty space in yin-yang eye of ice and fire, and then turned his eyes to the junction of yin-yang eye of ice and fire and the ice and fire spring. There, a huge blue-silver emperor that almost occupied the entire yin-yang eye of ice and fire took root. The blue-gold light lit up on the vines of the blue-silver emperor, and finally, in front of the blue-silver emperor, it gathered into the light and shadow of a beautiful woman. After seeing this beautiful woman, Tang Hao's expression, which was originally filled with a murderous aura after the battle, instantly softened. He called softly, "Ah Yin." Ah Yin's shadow walked towards him, and her blue watery eyes looked at Su Yu and Su Chen, who were unconscious on the ground. She knelt on the ground, stretched out her hands, and gently stroked their cheeks. The faint blue light spots, through her palms, slowly merged into the bodies of Su Yu and Su Chen, recovering their injuries and soul power. After a while, Ah Yin stood up again and glared at Tang Hao, who was standing next to her. "Be gentle to the children. Just by looking at the way you treat these two children, I can imagine how you used to take care of Xiao San and Xiao Liu." What's more, she had seen it with her own eyes. Tang Hao scratched the back of his head. How can it be the same? Xiao San and Xiao Liu are our own flesh and blood after all. I must be better to them than these two little guys. Ah Yin rolled his eyes and couldn't help but say two words that he had learned when he was a soul accompanying Tang Liu and watching dramas with Tang Liu. "That's it, Tang Hao, it's not very harmful, but it's very insulting. Prepare for the New Year's Eve, and say Happy New Year to everyone in advance." The first stage of our book is about turn 2021, a new look. New us, a new start. Chapter 319, God War. His consciousness was still a little fuzzy. He still forced himself to open his eyes. It was like a person who woke up in the middle of the night and tried hard to open his eyes, but his eyelids were as heavy as if they were filled with lead. After finally opening a little gap, they soon closed again in the darkness. Even because of the fuzzy consciousness, there would be an illusion that I have actually opened my eyes. If the will to wake up is not firm enough, you will fall back into sleep in this illusion. Similarly, this is the same as when we are woken up by the alarm clock at a certain point in the morning, and then when we are completely awake, we find that several points have passed. But in any case, he still woke up. A fresh smell rushed into his nose, like a green meadow after rain. What caught his eyes was a faint cloud, but he could still vaguely see the clear and blue sky. He was stunned and just lay on the ground stupidly, looking like he didn't want to move. But soon, he immediately stood up, secretly circulated the soul power in his body, and looked around vigilantly. He saw Su Yu lying not far away at a glance. From a simple observation, Su Yu should be fine for the time being. But where are they now? He remembered that they should have been forced into a desperate situation by the spirit masters of the spirit hall. Judging from the surrounding environment, this should be a valley. There are some plants around that he has never seen before. But for the time being, there should be no danger here. So he approached Su Yu carefully. Just as he walked to Su Yu's side, a vigorous and powerful voice came from behind him. Awake, he was secretly shocked and immediately turned around and made a posture ready to fight. At first glance, he saw a huge blue vine plant. The blue vine was as crystal clear as crystal, and the golden lines on it made this blue vine add a lot of noble beauty. However, behind this blue vine plant, there was something more eye-catching. A small pool of water. A pool of water with distinct red and blue colors. And on the shore of the red and blue pool, next to the blue vine plant, a man who looked to be in his 30s sat cross-legged. The previous voice should have been made by him. However, judging from the man's appearance, He should have been there for a long time. But he didn't feel anything. It was as if the man didn't exist at all. This meant that the man's cultivation was far superior to his. The biggest possibility was that this was another title Douluo. His whole body was tense, ready to take Suyu away at any time. He looked at the man sitting beside Tan vigilantly. The man just stared at the blue vines around him, and did not move at all, like a sculpture. After a long time, he didn't know if it was because of the wind, but he saw that the blue vines around the man moved and rolled up the man's fingers. He saw the man smiled helplessly, then turned his head to look at him and said, "Don't worry, you are absolutely safe here. Don't worry about those people from the spirit hall coming to trouble you." Even so, he still didn't dare to take it lightly, and asked cautiously, "May I ask who you are?" The man replied lightly, "Haoshan Douluo." He was immediately startled. "Your Majesty Haoshan, the dark bottom of the lake." Being stared at by the huge purple eyes, Mu Jing didn't dare to move at all. She could feel that there was a tremendous spiritual force spying on her, making her know where to hide and being seen through without any cover. The sharp perception of the elements given to her by the seven-star plum also kept telling her that all the elemental energies around her were trembling under this overwhelming and almost boundless spiritual force. What kind of existence could have such an oppressive force? What kind of hell did Kyankan Wunking Valley teleport her to? Just when Mu Jing was crazy and fragrant in her heart, the magnificent spiritual force surrounding her immediately entered her spiritual sea, as if entering and exiting an unmanned place. This means that from this moment on, that existence can quietly erase her consciousness at any moment. Although, since she saw the huge purple eyes, her life can be said to be no longer in her own hands. But now, being invaded so easily into the spiritual sea still makes her feel creepy. She had no power to fight back, and now she could only accept that she was in a helpless situation, at the mercy of others, waiting to die. At this moment, in her senses, even a second seemed as long as a lifetime. She waited for a voice. A majestic female voice. "Human, why are you here? Who sent you in, and why can't I read your memory?" Mu Jing was stunned. This is the inner world. The world of fire elements. It is a world that is interlocked, with a total of 18 layers. The deepest part of this inner world, which is the 18th layer of the inner world, is a sea of molten lava. But it is also this sea of molten lava that gave birth to a god on this world. Of course, this god probably belongs to the level and status of the Lord of the Plane, and has not been officially recognized by the god realm. However, the god realm has always stipulated that for such a Lord of the Plane who has already given birth to physical body and divine consciousness, once discovered, the main method is to destroy it. Unfortunately, the gods born from this inner world, who had been hiding in the deepest part of the inner world since their birth, were discovered by the gods of the divine world because they helped the humans on the ground. No, this god should be called the Queen of the Inner World. Her name is Lian. A golden light column appeared in the deepest part of the inner world without any warning, as if someone had opened a special door for it, so it seemed to have fallen from the sky. Although there is no sky in the inner world, when the golden light column fell out of thin air, it still gave people a feeling that it was piercing the sky. The golden light was full of sacred air, and at the same time, a middle-aged man slowly walked out of the golden light. Seeing this person appear, the Queen of the Inner World, the physical incarnation of the Lord of the Plains, Li Yan's expression suddenly became extremely nervous, and a layer of light red light mist rose from her body. The man who slowly walked out from the golden light was extremely handsome, wearing golden armor, tall, and very fitting golden armor that shone with a faint strange magic pattern. He had 2 pairs of huge golden wings spread out behind him, and his whole body exuded an indescribable power. The moment he appeared, this hot world of the inner earth lake suddenly became cold, and the core of this inner earth world was trembling because of this man's arrival, as if the magma in the inner earth lake was about to solidify at any time. Chapter 320, Killing God's Consciousness. In fact, it was not a change in temperature, but a purely spiritual pressure. The cold breath made the originally dark red world glow with a layer of white, which was completely condensed from the cold murderous aura. On the man's simple face, there was a pair of water blue eyes. In his eyes, there was not even a trace of vitality, only coldness and coldness. He looked at Li Yan coldly, as if he was looking at a lamb to be slaughtered. The law enforcer shuppers under the throne of the god of sure law enforcement in the god realm is here. Evil creature, why don't you surrender? Follow me back to the god realm to listen to the decision of the committee. Li Yan's body slowly floated back in the air, and fear was clearly revealed in his eyes. Hello, Lord SYNOPSIS. I don't know what crime I have committed. You want to arrest me and take me back to the God realm? Li Yan has been a god for a long time, and knows a little about the affairs of the God realm. When she heard the other party introduce himself, her heart had sunk to the bottom of the valley. Originally, she still held some hope. If it was an ordinary god slanderer, she might still have a chance. However, when she heard that the other party was the god of killing, she no longer had any luck. The god of killing, SYNOPSIS, was the strongest and the best killer under the throne of God Shura. Although this god of killing, like her, was a second-level god, his innate killing attribute could almost restrain all gods. In addition, he had God Shura as his backer, so he could have an equal dialogue even when facing some main gods. Li Yan never thought that the God realm would attach so much importance to him that they actually sent this Lord God of killing. Two golden lights suddenly burst out of SYNOPSIS' eyes and he looked directly at Li Yan. The strong divine light seemed to pierce through Li Yan's consciousness. What crime have you committed? The existence of this abyss evil barrier is a sin in itself. You should not appear in this world at all. However, you have been hiding here and have never revealed your god-level cultivation, so you have not been discovered by the God realm. This time, you dared to rashly affect the development of the human world and leaked your power. How can you be allowed to exist? How serious is your guilt and what kind of punishment will you receive? The God Realm Committee will make a fair judgment. Surrender immediately and follow me back to the God Realm, otherwise, I will kill you without mercy. Li Yan gritted her teeth and glanced at a certain place in this lava world without leaving a trace. There, her lover was hiding. So she said, I'm sorry, Lord Killer God, I'm sorry I can't obey your order. Killer God Hypnos said in disbelief, what did you say? You dare to disobey the order of the God Realm? As he said this, his consciousness also clearly told him that the fear that Li Yan had felt when he saw him had completely disappeared at this time. All turned into determination. Li Yan smiled sadly and said, anyway, if I go back to the God Realm with you, I will be destroyed by the God Realm's law enforcers. Since we are all going to die, what's the difference between dying at your hands and dying at the hands of the God Realm's law enforcers? The god of death suddenly felt that his dignity was offended, and his blue eyes immediately turned cold white. He said, since you are determined to die, then I will fulfill your wish. Li Yan's fiery red eyes lit up, and the power of her whole body reached its peak as she opened her arms. The magma of the inner world began to surge and churn, and it seemed that it would roll towards the god of death Hypnos at any time at the command of Li Yan. The god of death snorted coldly, and the divine light on his body was greatly boosted. The cold murderous intent immediately spread to the surroundings until it enveloped the entire 18 layers of the inner world. Then, in an instant, the churning magma became much quieter. Li Yan's expression was pale, and it was obvious that he was suppressed a little. However, Li Yan had the power of a second-level god, so although she was slightly at a disadvantage, she still launched a fierce counterattack. A god-level battle began. This was destined to be a magnificent and dangerous battle. The god of killing did not dare to guarantee that he could win against Li Yan. And this inner world was Li Yan's home field, which meant that she could have a constant supply of divine power to support her. In addition, this was the innermost part of the planet, and if she was not careful, it might lead to the destruction of the entire planet. If it really came to that, it would not be Li Yan who would suffer, but the god of killing, SYNOPSIS. Therefore, the god of killing had no choice but to borrow the power of the god of Shura to stabilize the inner world from being destroyed by their battle, thereby endangering the entire planet. After the inner world was restricted, Li Yan's offensive was obviously much weaker. Li Yan's face became ugly, but her eyes became more determined at the same time. She knew that it was time. Then several golden lotus seeds appeared around her, surrounding her delicate body. A rich golden red light began to bloom in this inner world. The god of killing, who saw this golden red light, immediately screamed in disbelief, "You are crazy, do you want to die with me?" Li Yan's body gradually became illusory, and was replaced by an extremely beautiful red lotus, but her expression was extremely firm. "Only in this way can I defeat you, only in this way can I protect your lover." After the golden red light gradually faded, Li Yan disappeared completely. All her aura disappeared. But the god of killing's consciousness survived. Right in the center of this inner world. He just wanted to escape, but a black-haired man, very abruptly, rushed out of the flames with an extremely huge sword in each hand. The black-haired man's face was full of grief and anger, and then he gradually closed the two long swords together. The god of killing's consciousness wanted to escape, but was firmly bound by the suction generated by the two swords and could not move. He was even horrified to find that his consciousness was gradually being absorbed by the two long swords. He tried to negotiate with a black-haired human man, but the man just continued to close the two swords indifferently and said to him, "You are the murderer who killed Lion, you deserve to die." So, the god of death could only watch in despair as the two swords were about to close. Before he died, he also recognized the identity of this sword. It was the artifact of the god of fire. The artifact of a first-level god. No wonder it could absorb his consciousness. In despair, he silently watched the sword of the god of fire gradually close. However, at the moment when the sword of the god of fire was about to close completely, he felt a cold breath coming in. At the same time, the voice of the human man holding the sword of the god of fire sounded, "Who are you? What do you want to do?" Then, another voice sounded, with some apology, "Sorry, in order to go back, I can only take his consciousness from you." The next moment, another suction came, which was even stronger than the binding force of the sword of the god of fire. The god of death's consciousness did not even react, and was sucked away by the suction. The black-haired man looked angry and a white crown appeared on his head. His left and right hands were burning with golden and black flames respectively. At the same time, the two long swords were also burning with golden and black flames respectively. The two swords were completely closed, emitting a strong shock wave. A 3-foot-long sword that pierced into the gap between the two swords was also bounced off at this time and fell into the hands of a person floating in the air. It was Lu Qifeng. Chapter 321 Second Round of Assessment, completed. Lu Qifeng had been watching the battle between the two gods in the dark, and was shocked and regretful for the fate of the female god after the final desperate struggle. However, when the body of the god of killing was destroyed, leaving only the consciousness, he knew that his chance had come. But when he saw the black-haired man who came out of nowhere, holding two long swords to bind the consciousness of the god of killing, and slowly absorbing the consciousness of the god of killing. Seeing this, Lu Qifeng naturally did not dare to wait any longer, and immediately made a full effort, using Jiu Feng's devouring talent, and began to snatch the consciousness of the god of killing from the two giant swords of the black-haired man. His sword eyes saw at a glance that the two giant swords of the black-haired man had an irresistible sealing ability for the consciousness of the god of killing. Once the two giant swords merged into one, the consciousness of the god of killing could no longer escape, and could only be slowly absorbed by the giant swords. Similarly, if the two giant swords successfully merged into one, then he would never be able to absorb the consciousness of the god of killing, and he would not be able to complete the second round of assessment in Kyankin Valley, and he would not be able to return to his own world. But now, he has succeeded in letting Jiu Feng devour the god of killing's consciousness. Or, most of the god of killing's consciousness. The black-haired man's giant sword has a strong binding force on the god of killing's consciousness, especially at the end, when the black-haired man's left and right hands burned with the golden and black flames, the binding force was further strengthened. What surprised Lu Qifeng was that Jiu Feng's devouring talent could actually absorb most of the god of killing's consciousness in such a strong binding force. Of course, Lu Qifeng was not sure whether the majority of the consciousness devoured by Jiu Feng could meet the second round of assessment in Kyankin Love Valley. So he was a little worried now. Could it be that he had to fight with a black-haired man in front of him, and then devour all the god of killing's consciousness in his giant sword before he could leave here and return to his original world? Fortunately, his worry was unnecessary, because then the gentle voice of Kyankin Valley, which could not distinguish between men and women, rang in his mind. Second round of assessment, absorbed the consciousness of the second-level god, the god of killing, Zupris, strengthened Jiu Feng, and passed successfully. Please be prepared, the third round of assessment will begin immediately. Lu Qifeng was delighted. It seemed that he succeeded. Maybe Kyankin Valley also knew that he could not take all the consciousness of the god of killing for himself, so it was very likely that as long as he could absorb a certain amount of the god of killing's consciousness, he would be able to complete the assessment. The voice in his mind was counting down, and the black-haired man not far away launched a fierce attack on him at this moment. The giant sword that he was holding disappeared immediately, and at the same time, the golden flame burning on his left hand suddenly became extremely intense. The black-haired man shouted loudly, "Band, 100,000, sun cone." His body then spun, and finally, the flame on his hand actually formed a golden cone, and then flew towards Lu Qifeng rapidly. Before the golden cone reached Lu Qifeng, he already felt an extremely strong and overbearing high temperature coming towards him. Secretly frightened, Lu Qifeng immediately waved the Qifeng in his hand, and at the same time, 7 soul rings rose from the bottom of his feet, and then lit up one by one. Since he didn't know the details of the black-haired man, Lu Qifeng did not take it lightly, but went all out. The black-haired man obviously thought so he also went all out with this move of Ban, 100, 1000, and Sun Cone. So, the martial soul true body plus the Qifeng with 6 soul skills, the sword tip and the Sun Cone collided in an instant. A strange buzzing sound came from the collision, and then Lu Qifeng and the black-haired man were bounced away at the same time, and both retreated several meters away. Lu Qifeng raised his hand to recall Qifeng, and found that Qifeng's sword body was slightly soft, which should be the result of being roasted by the golden flame. It seems that he still underestimated the temperature of the golden flame. He looked at the black-haired man and said, "I don't know your name. If I have a chance in the future, I will definitely come to repay the kindness of the god of killing." The black-haired man looked at Lu Qifeng in silence, and the golden and black flames on his hand slowly dissipated. He waved his hand tiredly and said, "You can go. Forget about repaying a favor. After rounding it off, you have helped me get rid of my enemy. I just hope you don't let the god of killing run away again." Lu Qifeng said, "May I ask your name?" The black-haired man replied, "My name is Jidong." Su Chen held a cup of hot tea in his hand and looked at the man sitting next to the Tan. He hesitated for a long time and finally said, "Your Majesty." Haoshan Tang Hao glanced at him and said, "What's the matter?" Su Chen said, "Do you know the whereabouts of our captain?" Tang Liu gave them guidance that if they were forced into a desperate situation by the Spirit Hall, they should go to the Sunset Forest. Therefore, now that they can see this Haoshan Douluo, it is probably the retreat arranged by Tang Liu for them. An absolutely safe retreat. Therefore, Tang Hao might know Tang Liu's current whereabouts, or at least, he should know how Tang Liu should arrange their next step. After all, Tang Liu only asked them to complete the surveillance of Jinringsu before, and there was nothing else. Tang Hao thought for a while and said, "I haven't seen that kid for almost 4 years, and I don't know where he is now." Thinking of this, Tang Hao was a little angry. Look at his 2 sons, there has been no news for 4 years, and he really doesn't take him and Ayin, 2 lonely old people, seriously. Hearing this, Su Chen lowered his head with some disappointment. There was no way, he didn't get Tang Liu's instructions for the next step for such a long time, and he always felt abandoned by the team. Tang Hao continued at this time, however, before he left, he asked me to save 2 people somewhere in this Sunset Forest at a certain time, bring them to this yin-yang eye of ice and fire, and then give them something respectively. Su Chen looked at Tang Hao, but found that Tang Hao was looking at the blue vine plant beside him. The blue vine plant shook slightly, and then stretched out 2 slender vines, heading towards a certain place of the yin-yang eye of ice and fire. After a moment, the 2 vines took out a palm-sized plant and handed it to Su Chen. Su Chen took it carefully, looked at Tang Hao, and asked in confusion, "Senior, what is this?" Tang Hao said, "I don't know what this is called. Zia Liu told me that you just need to eat it." Su Chen looked at the plant in his hand. "Eat it? Eat it directly?" Tang Hao thought for a while and said, "It seems that you only need to eat the leaves of this plant." As soon as he finished speaking, the blue vine beside him hit his waist. Tang Hao grinned and said, "I remembered it wrong, it should be eaten with the stem, the root can't be eaten." Su Chen, he looked at the dark green plant in his hand, and suddenly he didn't dare to eat it. Chapter 322 7-Star Plum Tree Spirit True Body. A golden light flashed, and Tang Liu appeared in an alley in a daze. Before he could come to his senses, the voice sounded in his mind, "Tonight, a team of people from the Spirit Hall will attack the Xingluo Palace. Your second round of assessment is to stop this night attack, find their leader, and defeat him with all your strength." Tang Liu walked out of the alley and asked in his mind, "Xingluo Palace? Is this Xingluo City?" "Yes. There are still 3 hours before the night attack of the Spirit Hall. You still have 3 hours to prepare." Tang Liu's brain worked quickly and said in his mind, 3 hours is enough. Standing on the street of Xingluo City, he took a look at the surrounding environment, and he knew where he was in Xingluo City. He identified the direction and walked along the street. He did not go directly to the Xingluo Palace to inform the Xingluo Emperor of his plan, but decided to walk through the entire Xingluo City first to find out where the people from the Spirit Hall were hiding. Mu Jing listened to the majestic female voice in her mind and was a little afraid to answer. According to the majestic female voice, she should have the ability to read memories, but now, for some reason, her memory cannot be read. Mu Jing didn't know if this was Kyankan asking Love Valley's protection for her, but this might be a bargaining chip for her to win a glimmer of hope. However, the next moment, the majestic female voice sounded again, which frightened her. Don't think about taking advantage of the loophole. Although I can't read your memory, I can still know what you are thinking now. Mu Jing's heartbeat quickened, and she forced herself to calm down as soon as possible. Kyankan asking Love Valley? So that's where you were sent here? Humph, Kyankan asking Love Valley, could it be that the God Realm discovered that I was hiding here? At this point, the majestic female voice was suddenly filled with strong murderous intent. Mu Jing felt like she was falling into an ice cave under this murderous intent, and the situation of being unable to resist made her feel extremely desperate. Could it be that she was really going to die here? Tell me, what is your purpose of coming here? As far as I know, the assessment of Kyankan questioning Love Valley always sends people to some strange places. However, this is the first time that someone comes here. In theory, Kyankan questioning Love Valley has no idea about her place. So, now that Mu Jing was sent here by Kyankan questioning Love Valley, she couldn't help but think about it. She must be alert to see if those guys in the God Realm have discovered her whereabouts. Her current strength is far from recovered. If those guys in the God Realm are determined to make trouble for her, she can't hide. So, if this human is really sent here by the God Realm to control Kyankan questioning Love Valley, then she must take some actions. For example, let this human be annihilated, and then erase all traces of her existence. However, Mu Jing's answer surprised her. Mu Jing calmed down and said in her mind, I don't know, you don't know, Mu Jing, I don't know why Kyankan Wanking Valley sent me here, the majestic female voice said with interest. That's interesting. It seems that you are just a pawn in the hands of the God Realm. However, since you are here, don't think about leaving. I can't allow your existence to expose this place to the eyes of the God Realm, Mu Jing said. Are you going to kill me? When she said this, she found that her emotions were surprisingly calm. The majestic female voice smiled. What do you think? Mu Jing closed her eyes. Please do it, the majestic female voice. Okay, I will fulfill your wish. As soon as this sentence was finished, Mu Jing felt that the extremely powerful spiritual power was withdrawn from her spiritual sea. But the next moment, the lake water around her suddenly became more condensed than the mud swamp. The huge pressure almost crushed her internal organs. In the face of the strong crisis of death, the soul power in her body surged unconsciously, and the martial soul 7-star plum appeared in front of her by itself, and then, 7 circles of soul rings slowly rose from the bottom of her feet. The blood-red soul ring at the end was particularly eye-catching. When the 7-star plum appeared, the lake water that was originally as swampy and condensed around it became much softer, and seemed to have a tendency to return to its original state. However, the next moment, the lake water turned into a blazing flame, burning Mu Jing's body fiercely. Mu Jing didn't even have time to scream, and the fire instantly burned her skin all over her body. She was roasted black in the flames, and even many parts began to turn into ash. Even the 7-star plum branches floating in front of her had a tendency to wither and burn. However, at this moment, the blood-red soul ring at the end suddenly lit up. Then, the floating 7-star plum branches immediately fell into the mud at the bottom of the lake, and then grew into a big tree 10 meters away. But there were no leaves on this tree, only dry and vigorous branches, and 7 plum blossoms growing on the same branch. Mu Jing's body also turned into ashes at this time and dissipated in the flames. But a light and shadow flew into the 7-star plum tree before that. The 7 plum blossoms on the branch of the plum tree lit up at the same time, and the next moment, the flames around them had a tendency to go out. 7-star plum tree is interesting, Suyu woke up slowly. Her soul power had almost recovered, and her injury seemed to have healed. She was a little confused. Aren't they being hunted by the spirit hall? Could those people from the spirit hall still heal her injuries? She supported herself on the ground with her hands, sat up, and looked around in confusion. The first thing she saw was Su Chen sitting cross-legged beside her. Su Chen seemed to be meditating and practicing, and judging from the soul power released from his body, he seemed to have entered a state of deep meditation. This is rare. They have been practicing since they were young, and have never entered a state of deep meditation. Unexpectedly, Su Chen actually entered now. Suyu felt a little relieved and a little envious. But she soon realized that she didn't know whether their situation was safe now, and she couldn't let her guard down. So she immediately stood up, posing a posture ready to fight at any time, and looked around vigilantly. However, at this moment, she felt something tapping her shoulder. She was startled and turned around hurriedly, and then saw an extremely beautiful woman. The woman with long crystal blue hair smiled and gestured to her to keep quiet, and then handed her something. Suyu looked and found that it was a golden green grass. Chapter 323 Night Attack. The blue-haired woman said to Suyu, "Pick each leaf and swallow it. Remember, don't chew it." Suyu looked at her in confusion. The blue-haired woman smiled. "This is a 9 mysterious spiritual light holy orchid, a rare fairy herb. Eating it will only benefit you. Your brother has already taken the minglan that grows with this 9 mysterious spiritual light holy orchid, so that they can enter a state of deep meditation." Suyu took it hesitantly and looked at the blue-haired woman's deep blue eyes. "Senior, who are you? If this little grass is really a fairy herb, why did you give it to us so readily?" The blue-haired woman pursed her lips and smiled, saying, "I was just entrusted by someone." Seeing that Suyu still seemed reluctant to swallow it, the blue-haired woman reached out and held Suyu's hands, and then pushed her hands holding the golden green grass to her chest. The blue-haired woman, "Believe me. Hurry up and absorb the medicinal power of this holy orchid. You have more important things to do." Xingluo City tonight seemed to be no different from before. The busy streets during the day were now completely silent. Perhaps, the occasional barking of dogs from the surrounding houses was the only sound of the night. This silence, on the contrary, made Xingluo City tonight feel extremely oppressive and heavy. It was as if a storm was about to come. Suddenly, the barking of dogs in the dark night became more rapid, as if these sensitive creatures had foreseen something. Amid these rapid barkings, shadows flew across the rooftops. They jumped forward, moving quickly, but made almost no sound, only the slight sound of the wind as they passed quickly. These shadows appeared almost at the same time in all parts of Xingluo City, heading in the same direction. Xingluo Palace. A large group of men in black fell into the Xingluo Palace like a tide. They quickly split up and sneaked in different directions. On the way in, they encountered a patrolling guard team, and immediately rushed up and quickly eliminated all the patrolling guards. Although these black-clad men were all soul masters, and their cultivation was above the soul master level, there were always 1 or 2 teams that encountered patrol guards who were much stronger than themselves. So, 10 minutes after these black-clad men attacked the Xingluo Palace, some colorful fireworks began to rise from all over the Xingluo Palace. After that, the patrol team's shouts also rang out in the palace, reminding everyone in the palace. Of course, their main reminder was the master of this country, the Emperor of Xingluo, and the elders who protected the country. As the signal flares were sent out, the guards in the Xingluo Palace began to gather. They annihilated the invaders in an orderly manner, and constantly joined other guards and exchanged information with each other. Soon, the battle between the guards and the invaders was pulled from being caught off guard at the beginning to a point of equal strength. But at this time, Soul Masters at the level of Soul Emperor and Soul Saint gradually joined the invaders. With the addition of these high-level Soul Masters, the originally relatively balanced battle situation immediately began to tilt one-sidedly. Except for a few elite teams, the guards of Xingluo Palace had only Soul Kings in most of the teams. When a large number of Soul Emperors and Soul Saints appeared among the invaders, these weak teams were almost immediately wiped out. As the guards of Xingluo Palace gradually decreased, and the high-end forces of the invaders continued to converge, the defense line of Xingluo Palace was immediately broken, and a large number of invaders rushed to the main hall of the palace. When these invaders broke through the defense of the main hall and entered, they also saw their target, Emperor Xingluo. Emperor Xingluo sat on his throne with a calm expression, his eyes were drooping from high above, looking at the invaders who broke through the vermilion door of the main hall with almost pity. The first batch of invaders stopped after they walked to the center of the hall. The only eyes they had outside their black clothes were looking up at Emperor Xingluo on the throne. They seemed to be a little afraid of the Emperor's power and did not dare to move forward. At this moment, several afterimages rushed in from the main hall gate. They stood in front of all the men in black and looked at the Xingluo Emperor. The one in the lead said sarcastically, "Your Majesty, your situation is over. You might as well surrender quickly and hand over your Xingluo to us, so that we don't have to do it ourselves." The Xingluo Emperor looked at him and asked with interest, "I see that others are all dressed in black, and they wish they could cover themselves up. Why do you guys show your true faces so openly? Are you so confident that you can annihilate my Xingluo in one fell swoop tonight and bring it under the command of your Wuhan Hall? Having said this, he suddenly paused, then made an expression of sudden enlightenment, and said, I forgot that your Wuhan Hall has now established a country. What is it called? The Wuhan Empire, right? Although it is a bit abrupt, I still want to ask, do you think your Pope is worthy of it, the leader, you? How dare you? The Xingluo Emperor suddenly stood up and interrupted the man's words. His evil eyes narrowed slightly, and he exuded a terrifying aura. He spoke almost word by word, suppressing his anger, and said, or is it that Bibi Dong is now confident enough to get her hands on my Xingluo Empire? The man swallowed his saliva, choked for a long time, and said with some lack of confidence, we are now in front of you, do you think you still have the chance to survive? The Xingluo Emperor snorted coldly, sat down again, put one hand on his temple, and didn't even look at the man. He said, I am too lazy to talk to you clowns. Your Majesties, please send these ignorant invaders out of my Xingluo palace. As soon as the Xingluo Emperor finished speaking, the entire main hall suddenly became dim. All the invaders looked around nervously, fearing that the enemy hiding in the dark would attack at this time. I don't know who looked at the ground, and then he saw a scene that he would never forget or recall in his life. The dark shadow height spread to the feet of all of them. One after another, black figures slowly climbed up from these dark shadows. They looked at the black figures with vigilance and fear, their instincts driving their bodies to retreat. The brain just sent a signal to the legs, but was interrupted by the cold touch on the legs. Chapter 324 The third round. They looked down in panic and found that at some point, their feet had been firmly grasped by a pair of hands formed by shadows, and then they were slowly dragged and fell into the shadows. When their brains told them that they should start struggling now, the black figures that had been waiting for a long time had already pounced on them with their fangs and claws, giving them a fatal hug. They were wrapped and assimilated by the black figures, and then like a pool of liquid, they slowly flowed into the dark shadows on the ground. No one could escape. When all the intruders who broke into the main hall disappeared, the dark shadows on the ground gradually disappeared. At this time, a starlight rushed into the sky from behind the throne of the Xingluo Emperor, flew out of the main hall, and turned into a huge, dazzling star crown with a diameter of hundreds of meters above the sky of the entire Xingluo palace. The gems on the star crown also burst into dazzling light at this moment. The stream of light overflowed, surrounding the mysterious light, rushing into the sky, and suddenly expanding, spreading to the surroundings. Finally, a protective shield was formed, covering the entire Xingluo palace. From this moment on, the Xingluo palace was isolated from the outside world. Xingguan's fourth soul skill, Star Guardian. With the two-titled Douluo of the Xingluo Empire taking action, the battle situation seemed to have changed again. And at this time, several more rays of light shot up from all parts of the Xingluo palace and came to the front of the huge star crown. The star crown dissipated into a sky full of stars, and turned into a 70-year-old man with a star crown on his head. His waist was straight, and his eyes were focused on the people in front of him, who were surrounded by 9 circles of soul rings. Senior Xingdu, your opponent is us, a titled Douluo said. Xingdu smiled faintly, everyone has reached this realm. How can you say senior? Don't talk nonsense, just go ahead. The titled Douluo looked at each other, and then rushed towards Xingdu at the same time. The star crown on Xing Douluo's head flickered, and the first 5 spirit rings arranged around him lit up almost at the same time. At this moment, it seemed as if the starry sky appeared directly in front of the titled Douluo. Xing Douluo was fighting with the titled Douluo of the invaders in the sky, and the other invaders on the ground were naturally handed over to Shadow Douluo to deal with. With the special nature of his martial soul, Shadow Douluo could travel to every part of the Xingluo palace in an instant. Coupled with his strength as a titled Douluo, it was effortless to deal with those invaders. However, in the process of constantly wandering around and catching people, he couldn't help but feel a little confused. Since the Spirit Hall organized this attack, why would they let him deal with their Spirit Master power here at will? They knew the strength of Xing Douluo. Now, even if it was a multi-to-1 battle, it would be difficult to end the battle in a short time. The Spirit Hall used so many titled Douluo to contain Xing Douluo alone, so what about him? If this goes on, won't the Spirit Hall be defeated? Xingluo Palace, Main Hall. Emperor Xingluo was also thinking about this question. Although he already had the answer. The title Douluo brought by the Spirit Hall this time were the ones who were restraining Xingluo in the sky. However, with Xingluo's strength, it was still easy to deal with those title Douluo, even if he couldn't defeat them. So, when no one could restrain Shadow Douluo, how could his Spirit Hall say that he could destroy his Xingluo? Of course, it was because of him, the Emperor Xingluo. Footsteps were heard at the gate of the main hall. Because the main hall was too empty now, the footsteps were very obvious and kept echoing in the hall. Emperor Xingluo slowly cast his gaze over and looked at the person who entered his main hall when the war was raging outside. The person slowly revealed his face from the shadows. The Xingluo Emperor was a little surprised and said, "It was you." Then, he thought of something and continued, "So, this time your Wuhan Hall attacked my Xingluo Palace. It was you who was instigating it, not Bibi Dong." The person who broke into the main hall at this time also spoke slowly. She said, "It was me." After a pause, she said, "Tell me the whereabouts of Tang Liu, otherwise I will destroy your Xingluo Empire." Lu Qifen, the next round of your assessment is your third and final round. The place you are going to is a sinful city called the City of Slaughter. Your mission is to survive in it and obtain the Killing God domain. Since this round of assessment takes too long, you will go to another time node to start your assessment. And in order not to disrupt the normal operation of time in this world, you will get a brand new identity. But don't worry, this new identity is just a shell. Inside this shell used for disguise, you are still your original self. The estimated duration of this assessment is 1.5 years. Please follow my instructions. As the golden light faded, Lu Qifen found himself in a small town. A place he had never been to. Looking at the conspicuous golden arrow in his vision, and then looking at his hands in clothes that had changed completely, he finally walked in the direction indicated by the arrow. Following the arrow all the way, he finally came to a very inconspicuous tavern. Please ask the bartender for a glass of Bloody Mary and drink it all, then please go to the designated seat to wait. Lu Qifen did as he was told and went to the bartender behind the bar to ask for a glass of Bloody Mary. When the bartender presented the glass of scarlet liquid, the fishy smell immediately made Lu Qifen frown. After countless battles, he immediately recognized that it was a glass of blood. It seemed to be a glass of fresh blood. Human blood. However, the special training of their team had long allowed him to remain calm in the face of any situation. Unless he was alone around, the complaining soul infected by Tang Liu would be uncontrollably expressed. So, he held the glass of Bloody Mary expressionlessly and walked to the seat designated for him by Kyankin Wenking Valley. It was an extremely remote seat that was hard to attract attention. Lu Qifen sat down, then suppressed his nausea and drank the glass of human blood. However, he did not swallow it immediately, but held it in his mouth and repeatedly considered whether to swallow it. But then, he realized that holding a mouthful of fresh human blood in his mouth was more disgusting than swallowing it directly, so he swallowed it immediately. Then he realized that his behavior of holding it in his mouth for a while before swallowing it seemed even more disgusting. Lu Qifen, I feel like vomiting, what should I do? Lu Qifen pinched the empty glass, resisting the urge to crush it. Chapter 325 The Past. The hint from Kyankin Wenking Valley only stopped here for the time being, so Lu Qifen sat in that remote corner, staring at the empty glass and feeling a little bored. During this period, some people kept coming in and out of the tavern. But from this point of view, this tavern didn't seem to have anything special. Besides, wasn't his third round of assessment going to the Killing City? Could it be that this town was the Killing City? But this place didn't look like the city of Sin at all. Lu Qifen was wandering in his mind until he heard a voice, "Give me a Bloody Mary." During the time he sat here, he had heard many guests who came and ordered this drink. If they just asked the bartender to order a drink like this, it would not attract his attention. In fact, when Lu Qifen heard this voice, he was subconsciously attracted to his attention, and even he felt a little confused. He looked over and saw a middle-aged man, leading a handsome man with long blue hair, ordering drinks at the bar. Lu Qifen, the middle-aged man and the blue-haired young man took their glasses and found a seat to sit down. Then, he saw the two of them drink the Bloody Mary in their hands one after another. After that, I don't know what the middle-aged man said to the blue-haired young man. Lu Qifen saw that the blue-haired young man's face turned pale, and then he leaned over and vomited. Seeing this scene, Lu Qifen also guessed what the middle-aged man said to the blue-haired young man. At this moment, he remembered his experience of drinking that glass of Bloody Mary before, and a bad memory came with a strong discomfort in his stomach. Lu Qifen, Fortunately, he didn't really vomit, but just felt a little bit like vomiting. After all, it has been a long time since he drank that glass of Bloody Mary. Maybe he has already digested and absorbed it. Lu Qiufeng, suddenly I want to vomit even more. After that, Lu Qiufeng watched the other people in the tavern laugh at the blue-haired young man. Soon after, the blue-haired young man, who had recovered, killed all those who laughed at him directly under the instigation of the middle-aged man. Lu Qiufeng looked at the blue-haired young man's clean and neat killing method and took a deep breath. Fortunately, he was sitting in a remote place and did not make any mocking moves, so the blue-haired young man did not pay attention to him from beginning to end. Then, the blue-haired young man walked to the bar and stared at the waiter until the waiter moved away from the bar, revealing a dark underground passage. The blue-haired young man looked back at the middle-aged man and jumped down without hesitation. The middle-aged man drank his wine by himself and did not give the blue-haired young man a glance. At the moment when the dark underground passage was revealed, Lu Qiufeng suddenly felt a familiar force coming out of it. Under the attraction of that force, he felt that his martial soul Qiufeng actually had an impulse to appear on his own. Lu Qiufeng suppressed the impulse, and the impulse gradually disappeared only after the waiter closed the bar again. Lu Qiufeng exhaled the turbid air in his lungs and swallowed the hot blood that had come to his mouth without leaving a trace. Of course, it was not the Bloody Mary he drank before, but the internal injuries caused by the previous impulse that caused his internal breath disorder. After swallowing the blood, Lu Qiufeng simply adjusted his breath to allow the internal injuries he had just suffered to gradually recover. After doing this, his mood inevitably became a little heavy. Because, what he just did made him realize. His Qiufeng did not devour and absorb the consciousness of the god of killing completely. But this is also normal. How can a small soul saint like him completely absorb the consciousness of a god? Even if his Qiufeng only devoured part of the consciousness of the god of killing, not all of it. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but start to worry. Maybe this consciousness of the god of killing will bring him an extremely serious hidden danger at some critical moments. He must find a way to let Qiufeng quickly absorb the consciousness of the god of killing as soon as possible. As far as he knew, the only person who could solve the problem he encountered might be Tang Liu. After all, Tang Liu had always been mysterious in the eyes of all of them. Even his sword eyes could not see through Tang Liu. Every time he looked at Tang Liu, he could only see an illusory blue. For some reason, whenever he thought of Tang Liu, Lu Qiufeng felt very confident that his Qiufeng could completely absorb the god of killing's consciousness. It seemed that Tang Liu would have a way no matter what. Just as Lu Qiufeng was thinking this, the bodies in the tavern had been disposed of, and then, many guests came in one after another. Not long after, he heard that familiar sentence again. A glass of Bloody Mary. Lu Qiufeng's eyes were immediately attracted. When he saw the man who asked the bartender for a Bloody Mary, he also discovered something. Everyone in the tavern cast their eyes on the bar at this time. And the man standing in front of the bar seemed not to have realized that he had become the focus of the entire tavern. That was also a blue-haired young man, but he had short hair. Compared with a blue-haired young man who was as gentle as jade and elegant as a gentleman, this one has a bit more of a youthful feeling. The two are almost equally handsome, but the previous one is more inclined to handsome. And this one seems to be more inclined to beautiful. That is Tang Liu, who Lu Qiufeng is very familiar with. He watched Tang Liu holding a glass of Bloody Mary and walked towards the middle-aged man, and finally sat opposite the middle-aged man. When Tang Liu was about to drink the glass of Bloody Mary, the middle-aged man stopped him. He looked at a certain blind guy who went up to tease Tang Liu. Lu Qiufeng looked at the blind guy's salty pig hand gradually sliding down from Tang Liu's shoulder and approaching his chest, and he felt his face blushing inexplicably. Of course, maybe it was not because he saw that guy's hand gradually approaching Tang Liu's chest that he blushed, but because his eyes looked at Tang Liu's chest. Well, the real reason for blushing, the author doesn't know, and dare not say. At this time, the voice of Kyankin Wanking Valley sounded in his mind again. Please join those people in the tavern and move towards Tang Liu. Lu Qiufeng, what kind of confusing operation is this? Although puzzled, Lu Qiufeng still walked towards Tang Liu with those LSPS in the tavern. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.